There's a moment in the amazing world of Gumball, and I need you to picture this, where a 12-year-old blue cat is hurtling through a dimension made entirely of the world's mistakes, surrounded by floating laser discs, the crazy frog, pogo balls, and a ventilation tube from the Titanic. And the show treats this like it's a normal Tuesday. Not a special event, not a movie, just another 11 minutes in Elmore. And the thing is, when you actually sit with what that dimension means, what the show is telling you about the nature of its own reality, you start to realize something genuinely unsettling. The amazing world of Gumball isn't a show that happens to break the fourth wall occasionally for a cheap laugh. It's a show that built an entire cosmology around the idea that its characters might be fictional, that their world is sentient and actively curating what gets to exist, and that if anyone ever figures out the truth, everything ends. And the wildest part? The show never denies any of it, not one. Tonight, we're going deep. We're talking about the conspiracies that Gumball planted, nurtured, let grow wild, and then just left there. Never confirmed, never debunked. The Void, the theory that Elmore is a television show within itself. The prophetic paintings of a banana who may or may not be able to rewrite reality. The character who became self-aware and tried to save everyone. And the question that sits underneath all of it. What happens when a cartoon knows it's a cartoon? If you're settling in for the night, get comfortable. This one goes places. And if you're new here, welcome to Cartoon. We do this every week. Long, winding, late-night conversations about why this ridiculous cartoon about a blue cat and a goldfish is one of the most philosophically ambitious animated series ever made. Subscribe if that sounds like your kind of thing, and let's get into it. I want to start where most people start when they talk about Gumball Conspiracy, because it's the right place to start, even if it feels obvious. The Void, Season 3, Episode 12. That's when everything changed. Before The Void, Gumball was a brilliant, chaotic, funny show that played fast and loose with its own rule. After The Void, it became something else entirely. A show with a mythology. A show with stakes that operated on a level most animated comedies wouldn't dream of touching. And the conspiracy isn't just that the Void exists. It's what the Void implies about everything else. Here's what happened. Gumball and Darwin are at the school stadium, watching the cheerleaders practice. The cheerleaders form a pyramid, collapse, injure themselves, and literally explode. Standard Gumball stuff. But then Mr. Small shows up wearing a tinfoil hat. Actual tinfoil. The kind associated with conspiracy theorists who think the government is reading their thought. And he tells them that things have been disappearing from Elmore. Not just misplaced, erased. He tells them to look for what isn't there. To look for what doesn't make sense. And Darwin notices it. Lockers 115 and 117 exist, but there's no locker 116. Someone is missing. Now, I need to pause here because this is already doing something incredibly clever. The show is using the language of conspiracy theory, the tinfoil hat, the paranoid mentor figure, the hidden evidence, but the conspiracy is real. Mr. Small isn't crazy. Things actually are disappearing. And the show knows you're going to assume he's just being his usual eccentric self, because that's what this show has trained you to expect from Mr. Small. He's the hippie guidance counselor who thinks his van runs on good vibes. Of course he's ranting about disappearances, except he's right. And the thing he's right about is terrifying. They figure out the missing person is Molly, a gray sauropod character who had appeared in Season 1 and then just stopped showing up. And this is where the real-world cleverness kicks in, because Molly actually did stop appearing after Season 1. She was a background character who never got developed, never got story, never became important. The show is taking a real production decision, dropping an undeveloped character, and making it part of the fiction. The world erased Molly because she was boring. Think about that. Not because she did something wrong, not because she was evil or dangerous, because she was boring. The world of Elmore, which the show frames as a kind of sentient entity, decided she wasn't interesting enough to keep around and just deleted her. And when they find her in the Void, this impossible static-filled dimension, where everything floats in a soup of TV noise, she's frozen in time, like a paused video. She doesn't even know anything happened. As far as she's concerned, she saw them yesterday. She has no memory of being erased, no awareness of the gap, which means the Void doesn't just remove you from reality. It removes you from your own experience of reality. You don't suffer. You don't wait. You just stop existing. And the world closes up around the hole you left, like water filling a footprint on a beach. And here's the part that kills me about this episode. When they escape, when they manage to drag Molly out of the Void and back to Elmore, their tinfoil hats get sucked back in. And the hats were the only thing protecting their memory. So they forget everything. They forget the void. They forget rescuing Molly. They forget that their world has a sentient garbage disposal for unwanted ideas. The conspiracy is real. They proved it. And then the world took the proof away. If that isn't the most perfectly paranoid premise for a kid's show, I don't know what is. But here's what I want you to sit with. The show never walks this back. In 6 seasons and 240 episodes, the void is never revealed to be a joke, a dream, a misunderstanding, or a one-off gag. It becomes the spine of the entire series. It's the mechanism by which the show explains its own inconsistency, retcons, and missing characters. It's the reason Rob exists as a villain. It's the engine that drives the finale. And the show never once has a character sit down and say, okay, here's what the void actually is. They leave it ambiguous. They leave it conspiratorial. They let you wonder. And honestly, that's the thread we're going to pull on all night. Because the void is just the beginning. Let me tell you about Rob. Because Rob is, I think, the most tragic character in any Cartoon Network show. And I'm including Marceline from Adventure Time and every single person in Steven Universe when I say that. Rob's story is a conspiracy theory that the show confirmed, piece by piece, across multiple seasons. And the conspiracy is this: what happens to a character who discovers they're fictional? Before season 3, Rob was nothing, less than nothing. He was a background extra at Elmore Junior High, a tall, blue, one-eyed cyclops who stood in crowds and never spoke. He was so unimportant that Gumball and Darwin couldn't even remember his name. In The Pony, the only episode where he had any real interaction with them before the Void arc, they keep calling him the wrong name: Ralph, Richie, anything but Rob. They literally cannot retain who he is. He's so forgettable that his existence barely registers on the world's radar. And then the Void took him. Because that's what the Void does to characters who serve no purpose. It erased him, the same way it erased Molly, the same way it erased the Crazy Frog and Clippy, and every other mistake the world decided it didn't need anymore. Rob was sent to the Void because he was, in the show's own brutal terminology, useless. But here's where it gets interesting. In the Void, when Gumball and Darwin are flying through that dimension looking for Molly, they pass right by Rob. He's just standing there, trapped, reaching out, and they don't notice him. They fly right past without a second glance. This was played as a subtle background gag when the episode aired, a blink and you miss it moment. But the show was planting a seed, because in The Nobody, the season 3 finale, that seed explodes. The Nobody is one of the best episodes of the entire series, and I'll fight anyone on that. Things start going missing in the Watterson house. Food from the fridge, possessions, small things that nobody can explain. Gumball and Darwin investigate and discover something impossible. Their house has a basement that none of them knew existed. And living in that basement is a glitched, disfigured figure covered in TV static, barely recognizable as a person. It's Rob. He escaped the Void by grabbing onto Mr. Small's van as it was leaving, and the escape destroyed him. His body is fractured, covered in patches of static that glow in the dark. Parts of him are missing. He looks like a corrupted file, a character whose data got scrambled during a bad download. And here's the scene that breaks me every time. Rob doesn't know who he is. He has amnesia. He's been living in the Wattersons' basement, stealing scraps of food, existing as literally nobody in a world that forgot he existed. And when his memories come back, when he remembers reaching out to Gumball and Darwin in the Void and being completely ignored, he doesn't cry. He doesn't scream. He just goes quiet. And then he says he's going to become their nemesis. This is where you need to understand what the show is doing. Rob's villainous turn isn't random. It's the only option the world gives him. He can't be a protagonist. That's Gumball's role. He can't be a supporting character. Those slots are filled. He can't be a background extra. The world already proved it would delete him for being useless. The only role left, the only way to justify his continued existence in a world that tried to throw him away, is to be the villain. The conspiracy here is that Elmore functions like a television show within itself, with slots and roles and narrative functions that characters must fill to avoid being erased. And Rob understands this. He's the only character who fully, consciously understands it. In The Nemesis, the second episode of season 4, Rob tries to follow through on his villainous promise, and it's pathetic. His traps keep failing. His schemes are so incompetent that Gumball and Darwin don't even notice them happening. He tries to destroy the Elmore Dam, and ends up at the Elmore Car Damage Repair Center because a bush was hiding part of the sign. The show is telling you that Rob is fundamentally not a villain. He's a scared, broken person trying to play a role he was never designed for, because the alternative is oblivion. And Gumball and Darwin, in a moment that's both incredibly sweet and deeply disturbing when you think about it, decide to help him. They give him a villain name, Dr. Wrecker. They modify his voice to sound deep and British, courtesy of David Warner, who voices the transformed Rob with this wonderfully theatrical minute. They build him a costume. They are literally constructing an antagonist, building a threat to themselves, because they recognize that Rob needs a purpose to survive. And when Rob rejects their friendship at the end, when he insists he's still going to destroy them, they intentionally walk into his trap just to make him feel like he accomplished something. I need you to sit with that for a second. Two kids voluntarily becoming victims of their own villain because they understand that his existence depends on having someone to fight. That's not a plot. That's a philosophical position about the nature of storytelling. And the conspiracy goes deeper because The Disaster and The Rerun, the two-part season 4 finale, and season 5 premiere, take everything the show has been building and crank it to 11. Rob gets his hands on a universal remote, purchased from the Awesome Store, which is a mysterious van that sells items of impossible power. And this remote doesn't control television. It controls reality, because reality, in Gumball, is a television show. Rob can pause people. He can rewind time. He can fast forward through scene. He can change the resolution. He can switch the language. He can press eject and make money fly out of an ATM. And the moment that rewrites the entire series is when he presses rewind and goes back. Not just through the current episode, but through the title card, through the opening theme, through the Cartoon Network bumper, and all the way back to a scene from the nobody in the void. He watches his past self, trapped and reaching, and he watches Gumball and Darwin ignore him again. And from that moment, his vengeance isn't personal anymore. It's existential. He's not angry at Gumball the person. He's angry at Gumball the protagonist, whose narrative importance condemned Rob to irrelevant. When Rob eventually sends Gumball into the void in The Disaster, the other side of the portal shows end credits scrolling. Gumball is literally falling out of his own show. The episode ends with Gumball pressing rewind on the remote, sending the whole episode backwards, and the season ends on a to be continued card. And when it picks up in the rerun, Gumball uses the remote to try to fix everything, but the cost is enormous. People get erased, family members vanish, time loops collapse. Eventually, Gumball manages to save everyone, but only by offering Rob mercy. He tries to rescue Rob from the void, and Rob refuses, saying he's a mistake in this world. But Gumball insists, and there's this moment where Rob's anger just cracks. He lets himself be saved, and the shopkeeper from the Awesome Store charges Rob $12.99 for the remote, because even cosmic power has a retail price in Elmore. I think about Rob a lot, probably more than is healthy for an adult thinking about a children's cartoon. But his arc is one of the most sophisticated explorations of metafiction I've seen in any medium. He's a character who discovered that he's a character, and instead of finding freedom in that knowledge, he found only horror. The void didn't just break his body, it broke his understanding of reality. He knows the rules now. He knows that the world has protagonists and antagonists and extras, and that extras get deleted. And every choice he makes from that point forward is shaped by that knowledge. He's playing a role to survive, and the tragedy is that the role he's playing requires him to hurt the only people who ever tried to help him. And the show never denies any of this. It never has a character say, "Rob, you're wrong, this isn't a TV show," because it is. Within the fiction, Gumball's world operates according to television logic, and the show knows it and lets you know it, and then moves on to the next joke without ever fully explaining what that means for anyone who lives there. Let me shift gears for a moment, because I want to talk about someone who doesn't get nearly enough attention in these conspiracy discussions, and that's Banana Barbara. Banana Barbara is Banana Joe's mother. She's an anthropomorphic banana who wears a polka dot bow and has googly eyes. She looks like the least threatening character in any animated series ever, and she might be the most powerful entity in Elmore, including the void itself. Here's what we know. Banana Barbara can paint the future. This is established in The Shell, a season 3 episode primarily about Penny breaking out of her shell, where we briefly see Barbara painting an image that immediately comes true. It seems like a throwaway gag. Weird banana lady paints weird thing, whatever. But then the Oracle happened, and everything changes. The Oracle is season 3, episode 31, and it's built around a premise that sounds simple, but lands like a gut punch. The Wattersons go to a yard sale at the Banana House and discover a collection of Banana Barbara's painting. Every single one depicts a future event. Every single one has already come true, and her latest painting shows Gumball appearing naked on national television at the Elmore Mall. What follows is an 11-minute exercise in dramatic irony, because Gumball spends the entire episode trying to prevent the painting's prediction from coming true, and every single action he takes to avoid it is precisely what causes it to happen. He tries to stay home. Fate drags him to the mall. He tries to keep his clothes on. Circumstances strip them away, piece by piece. And the punchline is that the final detail of the painting, a literal rain of raccoon, happens because of a chain of events Gumball himself set in motion by trying to avoid the first detail. It's a perfect self-fulfilling prophecy. The painting didn't predict the future. It created the future by being observed. But here's where the conspiracy kicks in. At the very end of the episode, the camera cuts to Banana Barbara in her house. She's painting a new picture, and the picture shows the entire Watterson family: Gumball, Darwin, Aeneas, Nicole, and Richard, running in terror through the void as Elmore collapses around them. And Barbara turns to the camera with this enigmatic, knowing smile. That painting haunted the fandom for years. It appears at the end of season 3 and isn't resolved until, well, arguably, it still hasn't been fully resolved. It's the single most important prophecy in the entire series, and the show just left it there, like a time bomb ticking in the background of every subsequent episode. And the conspiracy is this: is Banana Barbara predicting the future, or is she causing it? The Future, Season 6, Episode 34, answers this question, sort of, in the most disturbing way possible. It's revealed that Barbara used to be a competent, intelligent person. She worked at Chanax Inc., whatever that is, and her boss worked her so hard that she had a burnout. And the burnout isn't metaphorical. Her eyes shoot white energy beams that can laser through buildings. She literally combusted from stress and came out the other side as the spaced out, seemingly harmless figure we know. But here's what the future confirms that changes everything. Barbara doesn't just predict the future. She can paint the future into existence. Her paintings aren't windows, they're doors. When she paints something, it happens. And this power works through anyone holding the brush, as long as Barbara is part of the group holding it. Which means that when Rob kidnaps her in the future and forces her to paint the future so he can learn what's coming, he's not interrogating an oracle. He's commandeering a weapon. And what does Barbara paint when Rob forces her to try to see the future? Static. Nothing but static. TV static. The same visual texture as the void. And she says quietly, almost to herself, there is no future. Think about that. The one character in Elmore who can see and create the future looks ahead and sees nothing, just the void, just static, just the end. And the show takes that line, there is no future, and lets it hang there in the last season of the original series as an in-universe commentary on the fact that the show was about to end. Because if Elmore is a television show within itself and the show is getting canceled, then there literally is no future. The void, which consumes things the world doesn't need anymore, is coming for everything. And Banana Barbara knows it. She's known it since season 3. That painting of the Wattersons running through the void, it wasn't a warning, it was a preview. I need to take a small tangent here because something occurred to me while rewatching these episodes back to back, and I think it's worth saying. There's this tendency in fan communities to treat dark theories about kids' shows as inherently interesting. You know, what if the characters are actually dead? Or what if it's all a dream? Or what if the protagonist is in a coma? And usually those theories are boring. They're boring because they collapse the richness of a show into a single cynical explanation that drains all the color and fun out of it. Gumball's conspiracies are different. They're different because the show itself is generating them. The writers aren't hiding dark secrets that fans have to decode. They're building a mythology that is simultaneously completely accessible as a comedy and devastatingly complex as a piece of metafiction. You can watch The Void and laugh at the crazy frog floating through a dimension of mistake. You can also watch The Void and have an existential crisis about what it means for a world to delete its own citizens for the crime of being uninteresting. The show holds both of those experiences at the same time, and it never tells you which one is the real one. That's not a conspiracy theory imposed on the show from outside. That's the show's actual architecture. Okay, tangent over. Let me talk about The Signal, because this is the episode where the show stops hinting and starts screaming. The Signal is season 4, episode 24. The premise seems simple. Gumball develops a stutter that keeps making him accidentally insult Darwin. But within the first 30 seconds, you realize something is wrong. The screen stutters. The image freezes. There's a jump cut that teleports Gumball to a different location. This isn't Gumball having a speech problem. This is the show itself glitching. And the glitches aren't just visual, they're physical. Characters teleport, scenes skip, reality hiccups. At one point, Richard starts speaking Spanish for no reason, and if you reverse the audio, the Swedish dub apparently contains a hidden message. The production team buried Easter eggs in the corruption. The episode escalates beautifully. At first, the glitches just affect dialogue. Gumball's compliments get scrambled into insult. Then they start affecting objects. Scenes cut without transition. Characters appear in wrong location. Then they affect physics. A car drives itself. The world reshuffles like a shuffled deck of cards. And finally, near the end, Gumball and Darwin are watching a news report about satellite broadcast issues affecting all of Elmore. And Gumball starts to say something. He starts to ask why the broadcast issues are affecting them. The people inside the broadcast. He's about to say it. He's about to figure out that he's on television. And the signal cuts out. Lost signal. Black screen. And when it comes back, the scene has jumped to the Watterson family sitting at the dinner table, with Richard cheerfully announcing that everything is fine, everyone made up, all is well. And Gumball and Darwin laugh along, nervously, unconvincingly, as if they know something is wrong but can't quite articulate what it is. And then the episode glitches one final time and ends. No resolution, no explanation, just a hard cut to credit. The title card for this episode uses the same ominous musical sting from The Void. Part of the opening theme can be heard playing in reverse. There are frames where you can see the face of series director Mick Graves bleeding through the image. The name of a production accountant, Jack Dingle, appears in the title card logo. The show is literally letting its own production bleed into the fiction, as if the barrier between the show being made and the show being watched is breaking down. And the conspiracy that the signal plants is this: the universe of Elmore will actively prevent its characters from discovering they're fictional. The glitches weren't random. They were the world's immune system responding to a threat. Every time Gumball got close to the truth, every time the characters were about to cross that fourth wall, reality intervened, scrambling the signal, cutting the feed, resetting the scene. The world doesn't just erase boring characters, it censors dangerous thoughts. Think about what that means for every snap back to normal in any sitcom you've ever watched. Every time a cartoon character's world gets destroyed and is magically repaired by the next episode. Every status quo restoration, every convenient amnesia, every time a character learns a lesson and then forgets it by next week. Gumball is saying that's not lazy writing. That's the world protecting itself. I know I'm getting into some heavy territory here, and if you're drifting off, that's perfectly fine. That's literally what we're here for. But stay with me for a bit longer, because we haven't even gotten to the part where the show equates losing money with losing animation quality. And that one is a real trip. The money is the season 3 finale, episode 40 of 40. The Wattersons are broke. Richard, in one of his classic magnificent failures, has lost all their money by literally throwing gold into the sea because he thought an offshore account meant putting money offshore. Nicole is furious. The family is destitute. And Larry, who works at every single business in Elmore because that's a running gag, and also probably a conspiracy of its own, offers them a deal. Do a commercial for Joyful Burger and get paid. Gumball refuses, not for practical reasons, but for philosophical one. He doesn't want to sell out. He delivers this whole speech about freedom and dignity and not letting yourself be reduced to a corporate cliche. And it's genuinely stirring, except for the fact that his family has no food, no house, and no prospect. They've lost everything. Repo men have taken their furniture, their walls, their grass. A guy literally rolls up their lawn like a carpet and walks away with it. And then the show does something that still blows my mind. Without money, the animation starts to degrade. Not metaphorically. The actual visual quality of the episode deteriorates. Gumball loses his color. Darwin starts looking like he was drawn by a child. Anace's mouth glitches. The three-dimensional backgrounds become wireframe, then storyboard sketches, then rough thumbnails, then post-it notes with stick figures on them. The sound quality drops. The voice acting becomes distorted. The show is literally falling apart before your eyes because the Wattersons can't afford to exist. This is the show telling you, point blank, that the Wattersons' existence costs money. That animation requires a budget. That the world of Elmore is produced, and if the production stops, the world stops. When Nicole says, "Without money, we're nothing," she means it in the most literal possible sense. Without funding, they're not even drawing. They're rough ideas on sticky notes, and the only way to fix it, the only way to restore reality, is for them to sign the contract with Joyful Burger, which they do, all except Gumball, who holds out until Larry shows him how much they're getting paid, and then he folds instantly. The episode ends with the Wattersons doing the commercial, dressed in absurd 80s fashion, hawking burgers with fake smile. They sold out, and the world came back. The colors returned. The animation quality restored itself. Reality was saved by corporate sponsorship. This episode won a BAFTA. It deserved every bit of it. Because underneath the comedy, the money is telling you the same thing the Void told you, and the Signal told you, and Rob's entire existence tells you. Elmore is not a naturally occurring place. It's a production. It has budgets and ratings, and executives somewhere making decisions about what gets to exist and what gets cut. And the characters live inside that structure, mostly unaware of it, except for the cracks and glitches and moments of devastating clarity that slip through. Alright, we've established the Void. We've met Rob. We've seen Banana Barbera's paintings, and the world's tendency to censor its own characters, and the literal economic infrastructure of animated reality. Now I want to talk about the test, because the test takes everything I've just described and asks the most dangerous question of all. What happens if the protagonist changes? The test is Season 5, Episode 8. Gumball takes an online quiz, one of those BuzzFeed-style personality tests that were everywhere at the time, and it tells him he's the loser of his friend group. Not the cool one, not the smart one, not the rebel, the loser. And Gumball, who has an ego the size of Elmore Mall, decides he's going to change. He's going to stop being sarcastic, stop being critical, stop being the person he naturally is. He's going to be likable. And the universe responds immediately. Because Gumball isn't just changing his personality, he's vacating his narrative role. He's the protagonist. And the protagonist of the amazing world of Gumball is, by design, a sarcastic, overconfident, occasionally mean-spirited kid who causes problems and creates story. When Gumball stops being that person, the universe develops a vacuum. And nature, as Sarah helpfully points out, Sarah, who I'm now convinced knows more about metafiction than any other character in the show, abhors a vacuum. Tobias fills the void. Not the void with a capital Vi, but the role. Tobias Wilson, the rainbow-colored cloud kid who's been trying to be cool since Season 1 and failing spectacularly, suddenly becomes the main character, and the show changes around him. The screen resolution drops, the aspect ratio shifts to 4:3, the audio quality becomes cheap and echoey, a laugh track appears, a sitcom-style opening sequence plays, with Tobias waving at the camera in a way that screams generic 90s family comedy. Aeneas gets thick glasses and a lisp. Darwin gets glitched out of the story. Characters start referencing events from previous episodes that they weren't part of, as if the continuity itself is being rewritten. And Tobias starts dating both Masami and Claire, because bad sitcoms love a two-timer date plot. Sarah watches all of this with increasing horror, taking notes like a media critic documenting the apocalypse. She recognizes what's happening. She uses the word protagonist like it's a clinical diagnosis. She knows that Tobias has taken over the show, and that the quality of reality is degrading, because the new main character is, to put it bluntly, lame. And I love this. I love that the show has a character who is essentially a media-literate audience stand-in, who watches the rules of storytelling play out in real time and reacts exactly the way a savvy viewer would. Sarah isn't surprised that reality can shift when the protagonist changes. She's annoyed by how bad the shift is. She's not scared of the metafiction. She's offended by the cliches. Eventually, Gumball sees Tobias dating Penny, his girlfriend, and the sight is so enraging that he finally spews out all the sarcastic venom he's been holding back. It literally melts Tobias's face off, which is horrifying and hilarious in equal measure, and reality snaps back to normal. The aspect ratio returns. The laugh track disappears. Gumball is the protagonist again, not because he chose to be, but because the universe won't function without him in that role. And then the episode reveals that the entire Tobias as protagonist sequence was Tobias's dream. He's in a hospital bed because he had a boating accident while trying to jump a shark on water ski. A joke about jumping the shark that I guarantee half the audience missed. The show wraps the metafictional horror in a convenient narrative bow and moves on. But here's the conspiracy. The show never bothers to deny. Gumball's personality isn't just his personality. It's a structural requirement. The universe needs him to be sarcastic and flawed and messy, because without those qualities, he's not the protagonist. And without a protagonist, the show doesn't work. And if the show doesn't work, the void comes for everyone. Gumball's character flaws aren't just funny, they're load-bearing. The entire reality of Elmore rests on a 12-year-old cat being a lovable jerk. And while we're here, I want to draw a connection that I don't think gets made enough. The Shell, Season 3, Episode 20, is one of the most beloved episodes of the entire series, and rightfully so. It's the episode where Gumball accidentally cracks open Penny Fitzgerald's shell during a school play, revealing that she's not actually a peanut-like creature at all. She's a shape-shifting fairy, a golden, glowing, otherworldly being who transforms based on her emotion. A dragon when she's angry, a gremlin when she's insecure, a tiny mouse when she feels small. It's a gorgeous, emotionally rich episode that scored a 9.4 on IMDb and won multiple awards. And the message on the surface is straightforward. Be yourself. Don't hide who you really are. Love is about accepting someone's true form. But through the conspiracy lens, The Shell is about something much stranger. Penny has been wearing a shell her entire life. Her entire family wears shells. It's a family tradition, a cultural expectation, a literal physical constraint on who she's allowed to be. And when the shell breaks, reality itself freaks out. Her father tries to transfer her to a new school. Pest control shows up with tranquilizer guns. The town treats her true form as a threat. The system, the world of Elmore, was not built to accommodate someone who changes form. It was built for people who stay in their shell, who look the same every episode, who don't evolve. And Gumball, the protagonist, is the one who breaks her out. Not deliberately. He headbutts her during a play, which is the most Gumball way possible to catalyze a life-changing transformation. But once she's out, he doesn't ask her to go back in. He chases her across Elmore, through forests and highways and the banana household, telling her that whatever she is, whatever form she takes, he loves her, and she believes him, and she stabilizes. Not into one permanent form, she's still a shapeshifter after this. Her emotions still alter her body, but into a version of herself that she can live with. Now here's the conspiracy angle. Penny is one of only 2 characters in the entire series to undergo a permanent physical change. The other is Rob. Both of them had their external form radically, irreversibly altered. Both of them went through that change in Season 3, the season when the show's metafictional mythology really began. And both of their transformations are connected to the show's deeper themes about identity, roles, and what happens when characters deviate from their assigned form. Penny's shell was her character design. For 2 full seasons, Penny meant Peanut Girl. That was her identity in the show. When the shell broke, her entire visual identity changed. She went from a 2D animated peanut to a glowing ethereal fairy rendered with entirely different animation technique. Her transformation isn't just a character moment. It's a design change. It's the show physically altering a character's art style in a way that can't be undone. And within the metafictional framework, that's extraordinary. Because if characters in Elmore are defined by their visual style, if the reason everyone looks different is that they were designed at different time, by different hand, for different purposes, then Penny breaking her shell isn't just personal growth. It's an act of creative rebellion. She rewrote her own design, and the world resisted. Her father resisted. Pest control came. The system pushed back against the change, because the system isn't built for characters who transform. It's built for characters who stay the same, episode after episode, season after season, reset after reset. Penny's transformation is proof that the status quo can be broken, that a character can change in ways the world didn't plan for. And the show celebrates this, even as it acknowledges how frightening it is for everyone involved. I bring this up because it adds another layer to the conspiracy framework. The void erases characters who are boring. The status quo resets deviant behavior. The protagonist role is enforced by cosmic mandate. But Penny proves that individuals can break through those constraints. Not easily, not without consequences, but they can. And when they do, the world doesn't end. It adjusts. Grudgingly, messily, but it adjusts. Penny's father eventually accepts her. Her classmates accept her. Gumball accepts her from the very first moment. The system bends, and that's hope. Real, structural hope. Not just things will be okay hope, but the system can change hope. In a show filled with conspiracies about how the world constrains and erases and resets its inhabitants, Penny's story is a counter-conspiracy, a proof of concept that even in a world designed to maintain the status quo, individuals can transform. They just need someone willing to chase them across town at 2 in the morning, telling them they're extraordinary. And this connects to something I've been thinking about the nature of transformation in this show more broadly. Every major conspiracy episode involves some form of transformation. In The Void, Molly is transformed from existing to non-existing. In The Nobody, Rob is transformed from background character to villain. In The Signal, reality is transformed by glitches. In The Money, the entire show is transformed from animation to storyboard. In The Test, The show itself transforms from Gumball's comedy to Tobias's sitcom. In the Inquisition, the characters are transformed into human. Transformation isn't just a theme. It's the mechanism by which the conspiracies operate. The void transforms existence into non-existent. The status quo transforms change back into sameness. The protagonist role transforms a person into a function. And Penny's transformation is different because it goes the other way. Instead of the system transforming a person transforms the system. She doesn't fit into any of the existing categories. She's not a peanut anymore. She's not a fairy. She's not any single thing. She's everything, depending on how she feels. She's a character who defied her own design. And instead of the world erasing her for it, the world made room. That's revolutionary. In a show about conspiracy, Penny is the revolutionary. I think Bacalé understands this. In the revival, he mentioned wanting to explore Penny's family more, to dig into why the Fitzgeralds all wear shells, what the shells represent, what it means that Penny is the only one who broke free. If the shells are a metaphor for the constraints the world places on characters, keeping them consistent, keeping them in their roles, keeping them from changing, then the entire Fitzgerald family is a case study in how the conspiracy operates at the family level. The shells aren't just physical, they're cultural, they're inherited, they're passed down from generation to generation, and the expectation is that you'll wear yours forever. Penny broke that chain, and the show celebrated her for it, and the world adjusted, and life went on. And that's the counter-conspiracy. Change is possible. Transformation is possible. Breaking free is possible. It just requires someone on the other side of the window saying, "Whatever you are, I love you." Speaking of hope and transformation, there's something else about The Sweater, Season 2, Episode 23, that I want to mention. It's a spoof of 80s sports movies, and Gumball and Darwin spend the entire episode trying to walk away from the cliche plot that's playing out around them. Two kids from a rival school challenge them to a sports match, and the whole episode unfolds on autopilot. The training montage, the big game, the inspirational speech. But Gumball and Darwin refuse to play along. They explicitly say they know they're in a cliche. They try to opt out, and the narrative won't let them, because the narrative needs them to participate. The story has gravity, and individual characters can't escape it. That's the most uncomfortable conspiracy of all, maybe. Not that some cosmic force is controlling events, but that stories themselves have momentum. Once a plot starts, it pulls you in whether you want to participate or not. And Gumball, across the entire series, is a protagonist who knows, instinctively, almost unconsciously, that adventure will find him regardless of what he does. His sarcasm, his overconfidence, his defensive humor, all of it is a coping mechanism for living in a world that won't leave him alone. His personality is an adaptive response to being the star of a show he never asked to be in. And honestly, that makes him one of the most relatable protagonists in animation. Who among us hasn't felt stuck in a story we didn't choose? Who hasn't felt the gravity of social expectations and cultural narratives pulling us toward outcomes we didn't design? Elmore is the world. The void is forgetting. The status quo is everything we can't seem to escape. And Gumball's answer to all of it is, keep going, keep being yourself, keep causing trouble, keep loving the people around you. The story will happen regardless. Might as well make it a good one. While I'm on the subject of how deep the details go, did you know that in The Oracle, the record album covers at the Banana House yard sale reference Tool, Pink Floyd, and the Velvet Underground? There's a cover featuring Banana Bob that's a direct nod to the Velvet Underground and Nico's 1967 debut, the one with the Warhol banana. Except instead of a Warhol banana, it's literally Banana Joe's dad. That kind of reference flies completely over kids' heads and lands perfectly for anyone who's ever browsed a record store. And those details matter because they're world building. Every real-world reference layers Elmore's reality with connections to our reality. The universal remote is an allusion to Click. The void contains a ventilation tube from the Titanic and Microsoft's Office assistant Clippy. Rob's villain voice was performed by David Warner, channeling every British villain in cinema history. The show is constantly whispering, "This world is made of pieces of your world." Elmore is constructed from our cultural detritus, our discarded trend, our forgotten fad. The boundary between fiction and reality isn't as solid as it seems. And that's the conspiracy hiding in every background detail, every album cover, every blink and you miss it cultural reference. Bacalé told Squiggly that he loved the idea that young children would ask their parents to go on holiday to Elmore because they wanted to hang out with Gumball. I wanted them to believe it exists. That's the show's fundamental creative principle. Blur the line between animation and reality until you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. And that blur is the conspiracy. Elmore doesn't just exist on your screen. It exists in the space between your screen and your eye, in the gap between watching and believing, in the moment when you forget you're looking at drawings and start feeling like you're looking through a window. There's a fan theory that spins off from this, that the reason Gumball and Darwin never age, never permanently change, never have their voices drop for more than an episode, is that the universe literally won't let them. The world resets itself to keep the protagonist functional. Multiple episodes reference the passage of time in ways that don't add up. They've had at least 3 separate Halloween episodes. They've been in the same grade for 6 seasons. And in The Kids, when their voices start changing because the original voice actors were growing up, the show makes the voice change a plot point and then replaces the actor, as if the universe itself is performing maintenance on its character. And the show treats this as normal, as just another thing Elmore does, which is, when you think about it, the most conspiratorial thing of all. The cover-up isn't dramatic, it's mundane. The universe hides its manipulation in the everyday, in the status quo, in the things you accept without questioning, because they're just how cartoons work. Okay, I need to talk about the Awesome Store, because if there's one conspiracy thread that ties the entire series together, it's this stupid van. The Awesome Store is a mysterious van that appears throughout the series, always at exactly the right moment, always selling something that will radically alter the plot. Richard bought Darwin from this van. He bought the evil turtle from it in The Puppy. Rob bought the universal remote from it in The Disaster. The shopkeeper is a shadowy, hard-to-define figure who seems to exist outside the normal rules of Elmore. And in the revival series, The Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball, the Awesome Store becomes even more important. The shopkeeper saves Rob from the void at the end of the Inquisition and recruits him to help maintain reality. Ben Bacalé, the show's creator, talked about this in an interview with Telltale TV. He said the Awesome Store used to be this fun solution to explain whatever thing we didn't know how to explain, and that it became more important over time. It went from a plot device to a narrative catalyst, from a joke to a mythology. And the conspiracy around the Awesome Store is that it might be the closest thing Elmore has to a god. Not a benevolent god, not a malevolent one, but an administrative one. A figure who distributes the tools the plot needs to function. Remote controls that rewrite reality. Pets that become family members. Turtles that represent chaos. And then charges a surprisingly reasonable retail price for them. The Awesome Store is the supply chain of destiny. It's the prop department of the universe. And the fact that it exists means that someone, somewhere, is managing the story. Not the world. Not the void. A person. A shopkeeper who chooses what to sell and who to sell it to. Let me dig into this a bit more, because the Awesome Store has a history that's more significant than most people realize. It first appears in The Puppy, Season 3, Episode 1 of the new production run, where Richard purchases the evil turtle. The evil turtle is a seemingly innocent pet that turns out to be violently dangerous, and it catalyzes an entire episode of chaos. The next significant appearance is in The Origin, a 2-part episode that tells the story of how the Wattersons adopted Darwin. And the reveal is that Darwin was also purchased from the Awesome Store. Their son, their adopted child, the second most important character in the show, was a product, bought from a van, sold by a mysterious figure who sells objects of enormous narrative power for pocket change. That's not just a joke, that's a worldview. In Elmore, the most important thing, family members, weapons of reality destruction, agents of chaos, all come from the same source. The Awesome Store doesn't discriminate between a turtle and a sun, between a remote control that can rewrite time and a cursed artifact that brings misery. It sells whatever the story needs with equal indifference. It's commerce without morality. It's capitalism as narrative engine. And the shopkeeper doesn't care what you do with what you buy. He cares that you pay. There's something deeply funny and deeply disturbing about that. The fact that Rob, a character driven by existential despair, a broken person seeking revenge on the protagonist who ruined his life, has to buy his weapon of mass reality destruction from a van for $12.99. The apocalypse has a price tag, and it's cheaper than most meals. The cosmic horror of discovering you're fictional, that'll be $13, thanks. And in the revival, The Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball, the Awesome Store's role expands dramatically. The shopkeeper is revealed to be fully aware that the show is fictional. He saved Rob from the void at the end of the Inquisition because he needed a collaborator, someone who understands the metafictional nature of Elmore and can help maintain it. The shopkeeper has been operating behind the scenes for the entire series, distributing narrative tools, managing the story, keeping the machine running. He's not just a merchant, he's a stage manager, a producer, a god, yes, but a god in the sense that a showrunner is a god, someone who makes decisions about what happens to fictional people and then has to live with the consequence. Bocale talked about the awesome store's evolution in an interview with Telltale TV for the Season 2 premiere of The Revival. He said the store used to be this fun solution to explain whatever thing we didn't know how to explain, a Deus Ex Machina dispenser, basically, and that over time it became more important, if anything. He acknowledged that the store has become central to the show's larger mythology, particularly the connection between the store, the void, and the metafictional framework that drives the series' overarching plot. And the conspiracy question, who is the shopkeeper really, remains unanswered. Is he Bocale's self-insert? Is he a character from an older show, one of the rejected cartoon characters that originally populated Bocale's first concept for Gumball? Is he the manifestation of the show's own creative intelligence? We don't know. The show has deliberately kept his identity ambiguous, giving him no name, no backstory, no clear motivation beyond keep the story going. He's a mystery inside a conspiracy, inside a cartoon, and I suspect the movie, whenever it finally arrives, will finally tell us who he is. Or maybe it won't. Maybe the shopkeeper will remain a mystery, like the void, like Banana Barbara's true nature, like the fundamental question of what Elmore really is. Maybe some conspiracies are meant to stay conspiratorial. I don't know what that means yet. I don't think the show fully knows what that means yet. Bocale said in an interview that he has his own theory about the meta-narrative that he's saving for the movie, the long-announced, repeatedly delayed Gumball movie that's been in various stages of development since 2021. He said the theory will be answered, but that he wouldn't say it's dark, which is interesting, because everything we've discussed so far is, at minimum, existentially disturbing. If Bocale's personal theory about his own show isn't dark, then maybe the conspiracy isn't as bleak as it seems. Maybe there's a version of this story where being fictional isn't a prison sentence, but we don't know yet. And the show, characteristically, has never bothered to deny any of the darker interpretation. Let me circle back to something I mentioned earlier and dig deeper, because I think there's a conspiracy angle to Banana Barbara that most people miss. It's not just that she can paint the future. It's the question of whether the future she paints is the future that would have happened anyway, or the future that happens because she painted it. In The Oracle, the self-fulfilling prophecy interpretation is pretty clear. Gumball tries to avoid the painting's prediction, and his avoidance is what makes it come true. Classic Greek tragedy structure, Oedipus Rex energy, the whole deal. But the future muddies the water significantly. In that episode, Barbara's paintings don't just predict, they alter reality. She paints a crack in the ground, and a crack appears. She paints a portal between two locations, and a portal opens. Rob uses her hand to paint attacks against Gumball and Darwin, and those attacks manifest in real space. The paintings are acts of creation, not observation. So what does that mean for the painting at the end of The Oracle? The one showing the Wattersons running through the void. Is Barbara seeing what will happen, or is she making it happen? And if she's making it happen, is she doing it intentionally? Is the sweet, spaced out banana lady deliberately orchestrating the apocalypse? There's a fan theory, and I want to be clear that this is a fan theory, not something confirmed by the show, that Banana Barbara is the most dangerous character in Elmore because her paintings create a deterministic future. Every painting she's ever made has come true, which means, in theory, the painting of the Wattersons in the void must also come true. And if it must come true, then all of Rob's efforts to prevent it, all of Gumball's adventures, all of the void's machination, they're all just steps on a path that Barbara already painted. She's not a passive oracle, she's the author. Now, the show doesn't confirm this. Bocale has been careful to leave Barbara's true nature ambiguous. But in that interview with Telltale TV, when asked about fan theories involving the meta-narrative and the void, he said, "I've got my own theory, which I will not reveal. This is something we're saving for the movie." He was cryptic about whether the show is a simulation, a dream, or something else entirely. But the fact that he has a theory, a single unified theory that explains the cosmology of Elmore, means there is an answer. The conspiracy has a solution. We just don't know it yet. And honestly, I kind of love that we don't know. I love that this show has the confidence to build a mythological framework spanning 6 seasons, a revival series, and an upcoming movie, and still keep the central mystery intact. Most shows would have caved by now. Most shows would have done the Revelation episode, where everything gets explained and the mystery dissolves into a neat package. Gumball refuses. It keeps the conspiracies alive by neither confirming nor denying them, letting them breathe, letting fans argue and theorize, and build wikis full of evidence, all while the show winks and moves on to the next joke about a banana slipping on itself. Speaking of things the show winks about, let me tell you about the time Elmore's reality, literally tried to stop characters from figuring out they were in a cartoon. And I don't mean the signal, which was a warm-up. I mean the finale. The Inquisition is the 240th and final episode of the original Amazing World of Gumball series. It aired on June 24th, 2019, and it was designed to be one of the most deliberately unsatisfying series finales in animation history. I mean that as a compliment. The episode opens with Principal Brown in a panic. A school superintendent is coming to Elmore Junior High, and this superintendent, a live-action human being named Superintendent Evil, pronounced Avil, has declared war on cartoonish behavior. He wants the students to stop being animated. He wants them to be normal. He wants them to be human. Now, the show has had human characters before. Sort of, the mixed media style means live-action photographs and footage are everywhere. But an actual live-action person walking into the school and interacting with the animated characters is unprecedented. Superintendent Evil looks like he wandered in from an entirely different show, and the jarring wrongness of his presence is the whole point. He doesn't belong here. Nothing about him fits, and he starts transforming the student. 15 characters get turned into human versions of themselves on screen. Masami, Tina, Tobias, Susie, Juke, Rocky, Ocho, Banana Joe, Sarah, Penny, Leslie, Mr. Small, Anton, Bobert, and Idaho, all transformed into live-action or semi-realistic human version, and the effect is deeply uncanny. These characters, who exist in wildly different animation styles, some are 2D, some are CGI, some are stop motion, some are puppets, all get flattened into a single, consistent human art style. The diversity that makes Gumball unique is being systematically erased. Gumball and Darwin fight back. They remind each character of who they really are, using callbacks to previous episodes. Gumball sings the Banana Symphony from The Singing to restore Banana Joe. Darwin does the googly face from The Weirdo to restore Susie. They're using the show's own history as a weapon against homogenization, and it works. The students change back, confront Evil, and unmask him as Rob in a costume. Rob, who has been trying for seasons to save Elmore in the only way he knows how. And when they unmask him, he tries to explain. He tries to tell them that the transformation was their only chance of survival, that the other place exists, and they need to become human to escape there before the void consumes everything. But nobody listened. Why would they? He just tried to brainwash them all. Tina beats him unconscious without caring what he has to say. And then nightfall. Rob wakes up alone in the school hallway. He says, out loud, with real desperation in his voice, "Why did they stop me?" Transformation is the only chance they have of escaping to the other place. When this world, he doesn't finish the sentence. The ground beneath him cracks. The void opens up under his feet. He grabs onto a piece of the floor, dangling over an abyss of static and nothingness. His grip slips. And the last shot of the Amazing World of Gumball, the very last image of the original series, is Rob falling into the void, exactly as Banana Barbara's painting from the future predicted. That's the ending. No resolution. No rescue, no happy wrap-up. Just a character who was right about everything, who tried to save everyone, who was punished for being the villain even when he was trying to be the hero, falling into oblivion, and the void beginning to consume the world behind him. If you remember what we talked about earlier, about the show equating the void with cancellation, about Barbara's line that there is no future, about the metafictional framework where Elmore's existence depends on the show being produced, then the Inquisition isn't just a cliffhanger. It's the show depicting its own cancellation in real time. The void is coming because the show is ending. The characters are being erased because the production is over. And Rob, the only one who understood this, tried the only thing he could think of, making everyone human so they could escape into our world, the real world, the other place. He was trying to break out of fiction into reality, and he failed. I have to be honest, when I first watched The Inquisition, I was angry. Not at the show, but at the feeling of something unfinished. It felt like the writers had built this incredible mythology and then just walked away from it. The painting from the Oracle never came true on screen. The Void's attack never resolved. Rob never got his moment of redemption. It felt like a betrayal. But the more I've thought about it, and I've thought about it a lot across multiple years and multiple rewatches, the more I've come to believe that it's perfect. Because the thing about Gumball's Conspiracies is that they're about the tension between knowing and not knowing. The show is about characters who live in a constructed reality and almost figure it out, repeatedly, but never quite get there. The truth is always just out of reach. The signal always cuts out at the crucial moment. The tinfoil hats always get sucked back into the void. and an ending that resolves everything, that explains the void, that confirms the simulation theory, that gives Rob his happy ending, would betray that tension. It would answer the question, and the question is more interesting than any answer could be. The Inquisition is the show committing to its own conspiracy. It's the writers saying, the mystery continues. The cover-up is ongoing. Even we can't tell you everything, because the act of telling would destroy the magic. And then, of course, the revival happened, and things got even more interesting. The Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball premiered on Hulu on July 28, 2025, 6 years after the original series ended. Ben Bacalé returned as executive producer, joined by Eric Fountain and showrunner Matt Lazell. 40 new episodes, new voice actors for Gumball, Darwin, and Aeneas, Alcayo Thiele, Hero Hunter, and Kinza Syed Khan respectively, because the original actors had grown up, as child actors do. And the revival had to answer a question that the original finale deliberately left open. What happened after the void started consuming Elmore? The answer, beautifully, is that the characters woke up covered in dust, as if they'd been non-animated for 6 years, which they had. Bacalé described it in an interview by saying, they've just been non-animated for 6 years, and then they wake up and they're like, oh god, we have to continue with our lives. The in-universe explanation for the gap between the original series and the revival is that the characters were paused, frozen, like Molly was frozen in the void. The show was off the air, and the characters existed in a state of non-existence until production resumed. That's not a conspiracy theory, that's text. The show is telling you, openly, that its characters are aware, on some level, that they only exist when the show is being made. And the revival's opening episodes deal with the aftermath of that awareness. The hole in the ground at Elmore Junior High, where the void was breaking through, it's still there. But instead of being an existential threat, it's been reclassified as a plot hole. A literal plot hole, in both senses of the word. The void was going to consume Elmore because the show was ending, but the show got revived, so the void backed off. The hole became a plot hole because the narrative didn't end, and the threat that depended on the narrative ending became meaningless. In the rewrite, the Season 2 finale of The Revival, which aired on December 22nd, 2025, Rob reappeared. He was saved from the void at the end of the Inquisition by the awesome store shopkeeper, who also knew the show was fictional and hired Rob to help maintain reality. Rob now works for the shopkeeper, trying to keep Gumball and Darwin from discovering the truth about their world. Because, as the episode reveals, if anyone in Elmore fully realizes they're fictional, the void will consume everything. The truth itself is the trigger. Knowledge is the apocalypse. And so Rob, the character who spent seasons being the villain, who was broken by the void, who tried to save everyone and failed, takes on a new role. Not the antagonist, the protector. He's writing the script of the show, literally, with the shopkeeper, trying to keep the narrative coherent enough that the characters don't ask too many questions. He's become the conspiracy. He's the one keeping the truth hidden, because the truth would destroy the people he's trying to protect. But the shopkeeper is terrible at writing. His contributions to the script are clumsy and inconsistent. He writes "and stuff," and the words physically appear in the town. He creates plot devices that don't make sense. He teleports them all to chase after characters, because he wrote that they couldn't avoid a sale without considering where the mall actually is. The script of reality keeps glitching, because the people writing it aren't very good at it. And Gumball and Darwin notice the inconsistency, which makes them more suspicious, which brings them closer to the truth, which brings the void closer to consuming everything. Eventually, Rob decides the only way to save the show is to make himself the villain again. If Gumball and Darwin think Rob is behind all the weird things happening, they'll have an explanation that doesn't involve the truth. They'll think it's just their nemesis causing trouble, not the fundamental fabric of reality coming apart. So Rob writes himself a villain's role, lets himself get defeated, and falls back into the void, again, this time on purpose, as a sacrifice. He's choosing to be the villain so that the heroes never have to know they're in a story. And then the shopkeeper gives him a shadowy cloak and a new role, the protector of Elmore, for when the show eventually ends for real. Rob is now the guardian of a doomed world, waiting for the final cancellation, ready to do whatever he can when the void comes for the last time. I'm not going to pretend I didn't tear up the first time I watched that, because Rob's story has always been about a character trapped in a role he didn't choose, and now he's chosen his role. He's not the villain anymore. He's not the victim. He's the one who stands at the edge of the void and holds it back. And the show, which spent 6 seasons refusing to give him a happy ending, finally gives him something better: purpose. And the conspiracy? The show still hasn't denied it. None of it. The characters are still fictional. The world is still a production. The void still waits. And the only thing standing between Elmore and oblivion is a broken Cyclops with TV static for skin who learned to be brave. Let's take a breath. I know we've been in deep water for a while now, and I want to come up for air before we dive back in, because there are still more conspiracies to talk about. Smaller ones, weirder ones that aren't part of the main mythology, but are equally fascinating in what they reveal about how this show operates. Like, have you ever noticed that Larry works everywhere? And I don't mean he works a lot of jobs. I mean he works at every single business in Elmore. The gas station, the supermarket, the video rental store, the pizza place, Joyful Burger, the convenience store. He's everywhere, all the time, wearing different uniforms, but always the same exhausted rock-like figure. And in multiple episodes, the show acknowledges this. In The Laziest, for example, the whole town falls apart when Larry stops working, because he literally is the economy. Without Larry, nothing functions. The conspiracy is this: Larry isn't overemployed. He's the only employee. Elmore doesn't have a full economy with workers and managers and corporations. It has Larry. Everything runs through him. Every transaction, every service, every interaction with commerce passes through a single point of failure. And the show knows this is insane and plays it for laughs, but never explains why. Why is Larry the only worker? Is it because the world only needs one? Is it because, in a world built like a television show, you only need one character to fill the service worker role, just like you only need one protagonist and one villain? Is Larry the way he is because the show's budget only allows for one working class character? I don't have an answer. The show doesn't give one. It just lets Larry exist in his permanent state of overworked suffering and moves on. But if you buy into the metafictional framework, if you accept that Elmore operates according to narrative logic, then Larry's situation makes perfect sense. He's not a person who chose to work everywhere. He's a character who was designed to fill a role, and the role is worker, just like Rob was designed to be a villain, and Gumball was designed to be the protagonist. Nobody in Elmore chose their life. They were cast. And while we're on the subject of casting, let me talk about something that happened in real life that the show turned into fiction in the most unsettling way. When Gumball's original voice actors, Logan Grove and Kwesi Boki, grew up and their voices changed, the show made an episode about it. The Kids, Season 3, Episode 1. In this episode, Gumball and Darwin's voices start changing because they're hitting puberty, and it freaks everyone out. The voices become deep and alien, and the world reacts as if something terrible is happening. The solution? New voices, new actors. The characters are maintained, but the humans behind them are replaced. And the show frames this as a natural process that the characters must accept. But if you think about it through the conspiracy lens, what actually happened is that the world replaced the human inside the characters. Gumball and Darwin didn't naturally age and get new voices. The production team swapped out the voice actors because the show required child voices, and the children providing those voices had grown up. The characters didn't change, the actors did, and the show turned that behind-the-scenes necessity into an in-universe event, blurring the line between production and fiction in a way that's genuinely vertiginous when you think about it too long. This is what Ben Bacalé was talking about when he told Squiggly in an interview that he had designed this overarching plot running all the way to when we finally finished the show. He said the show was exploring the true nature of the amazing world of Gumball. Why is it like that? Why does it look like that? There's this mysterious reason why everything looks the way it does, and why things work the way they do. He was always planning this. From Season 3 onwards, the metafictional mythology wasn't an accident or a late addition. It was the design. And here's the conspiracy that ties it all together. The one the show has spent over a decade building toward without ever explicitly confirming. The Amazing World of Gumball is a show about a show. Elmore is a set. The characters are cast members. The Void is the cutting room floor. The Awesome Store is the prop department. Banana Barbara is the script, or the storyboard, or the writer's unconscious, or something even stranger. And the conspiracy isn't that the characters are fictional. They know that, on some level. The conspiracy is that they're not supposed to know. The world is designed to prevent them from figuring it out, because the knowledge would destroy them. That's not a fan theory. That's the text of the show. Every episode I've talked about tonight confirms another piece of it. The Void erases what the world doesn't need. Rob discovered the truth and was broken by it. The signal sensor's dangerous thought. The money ties existence to budget. The test shows that the protagonist role is a structural requirement. The Oracle predicts, or creates, the future. The Inquisition depicts the show's own potential cancellation, and the rewrite confirms that the truth is literally lethal. If the characters find out, the world ends. And yet. The show isn't cynical about any of this. That's the part that amazes me. A lesser show would turn this premise into horror. You're all fake. Nothing matters. Existence is a lie. Gumball doesn't do that. Gumball says, yes, this world is constructed. Yes, the characters are playing roles. Yes, the void is always lurking. And also, Gumball genuinely loves Darwin, and Nicole will destroy anyone who threatens her family. And Richard is the most benevolently useless father in animation. And Penny's relationship with Gumball is sweet and real, even if real doesn't mean what we usually think it means. The conspiracies aren't dark, they're melancholy. There's a difference. Dark means nothing matters. Melancholy means everything matters, even though it's fragile. And Gumball is profoundly, movingly melancholy, underneath all the jokes about fish with legs and bananas that slip on themselves. The characters' lives are meaningful precisely because they're contingent. They could end at any time. The void could come. The budget could run out. The show could get canceled. And knowing that, they keep going. They keep making friends and causing chaos and being alive. And let me sit with this for a moment longer, because I think the show's warmth is the thing that elevates it from clever to great. Lots of shows are clever. Lots of shows have metafictional element, fourth wall break, self-referential humor. Community has it. Deadpool has it. Rick and Morty has it. But clever without warmth is just cynicism with a smirk. What makes Gumball different, what makes it special, is that it genuinely cares about its character. Not in a sentimental, treacly way, in a real way, in the way that good parents care about difficult children, with exasperation and tenderness and the knowledge that love doesn't require perfection. Think about how the show treats Richard. He's the family idiot. He loses their money. He causes cosmic damage by getting a job. He eats everything, sleeps through everything, contributes nothing in any material sense. In a lesser show, he'd be the butt of every joke. The Homer Simpson punching bag, the Peter Griffin disaster machine. And Gumball does make jokes at Richard's expense, constantly. But it also shows you, again and again, that Richard loves his family with a purity and completeness that none of the other characters can match. His wonder hug in The Joy is so powerful it creates a pandemic. His love is literally infectious. He's useless at everything except being present, except being emotionally available, except loving his children without condition or limit. And the show values that. It values it enough to make his uselessness a cosmic mandate. The universe needs Richard to be useless because his uselessness is the container for his love. Or think about how the show treats Darwin. Darwin is a goldfish who grew legs and walked out of his bowl because he loved Gumball too much to stay in it. That's his origin story. The Origins, the two-part season 4 episode, shows us that Darwin escaped from a pet store, survived impossible odds, crossed an entire city, and evolved beyond his biological limitation because the power of his love for his family was literally stronger than the laws of nature. That's not a joke. That's the show's emotional thesis. Love is the force that breaks rule. Love is the thing that makes evolution cooperate. Love is why a goldfish can walk. And in the conspiracy framework, Darwin's existence is itself a conspiracy. He was purchased from the Awesome Store, the same van that sells reality-warping remote controls and chaos-inducing turtle. He was a product, a consumer good, and love turned him into a person. Love gave him leg and a voice and a place in the family and a role in the show. Darwin is proof that the system can be subverted, not through violence or knowledge or power, but through connection, through the simple, stubborn refusal to stay in your bowl when the people you love are in the next room. Every conspiracy in Gumball is countered by an act of love. The void erases Molly, and Gumball goes into the void to bring her back. The universe breaks Rob, and Gumball offers him friendship. Banana Barbara paints the apocalypse, and the Wattersons run toward each other, not away. The show's animation degrades to storyboard sketches, and the family sells out to Joyful Burger because they'd rather be corporate puppets together than dignified artists apart. Tobias takes over the show, and Gumball's love for Penny is what snaps reality back into place. Love doesn't defeat the conspiracy. The conspiracy is still there. The void still lurks. The reset button still erases consequences. The protagonist role still constrained. But love makes the conspiracy bearable. Love makes existence inside a constructed reality worthwhile. Love is the reason the characters don't fall apart when they glimpse the truth. Because even if the truth is that they're fictional, the love is real. The love between Gumball and Darwin is real. The love between Nicole and Richard is real. The love between the show and its audience is real. And real things don't need the universe's permission to exist. That's the conspiracy the show never bothered to deny. Not the void, not the simulation, not the metafiction. The conspiracy is that even in a world where everything is constructed and temporary and potentially illusory, the love is real. The connections are real. The experience of being Gumball Watterson, of walking through Elmore with your fish brother and your peanut girlfriend and your insane family, is worth having, even if it only exists because someone, somewhere, is animating it. And I think Ben Bacalé knows this. I think it's why he described his own theory about the show's cosmology as not dark, because the answer to what is the void might not be it's the existential threat of cancellation, or it's the entropy of narrative, or any of the bleak interpretation. It might be something simpler and kinder. It might be that the void is just the space where stories aren't being told right now, and that stories can always be told again, and that as long as someone cares enough to tell them, the characters survive. I don't know if that's right. The movie hasn't come out yet, and Bacalé is saving his answer. But sitting here tonight, having gone through 6 seasons and a revival of conspiracies that the show built with extraordinary patience and craft, that's the theory I want to be true. Not because it's the cleverest, because it's the kindest. And you know what? For a show about a blue cat who can't remember his own legal name, that's not a bad place to end up. But we're not done yet. Because there are more layers to peel, more episodes to examine, more moments where the show slipped something past you that you probably didn't notice the first time around. And I want to go through them, one by one, like Mr. Small going through Elmore with his tinfoil hat, looking for what doesn't make sense. Let me talk about The Job. Season 2, Episode 11. Richard Watterson gets a job delivering pizzas, and this is treated by the universe as a catastrophe. Not a personal catastrophe, a cosmic one. The moment Richard starts working, reality begins to tear apart. The sky cracks. Objects turn into different materials. Clouds become rocks and crash to Earth. Physics breaks down completely, and the only way to fix it is for Richard to stop working. The in-show explanation is that Richard is so fundamentally, cosmically lazy that the universe has built itself around his inactivity. The world's stability depends on Richard not contributing anything. If he works, the laws of physics can't handle it, and everything collapses. But through the conspiracy lens, this makes a different kind of sense. Richard is the stay-at-home dad. That's his role in the show. He's the lovable idiot who sits on the couch and eats and causes problems through incompetence rather than action. If he starts working, he's no longer filling his narrative role. And we've already seen in The Test what happens when characters stop filling their role. The universe destabilizes. The show can't function. The Job is actually an earlier version of the same conspiracy that The Test makes explicit. The universe doesn't just have protagonists and antagonists. It has a whole cast, and every member of the cast has a function. And if anyone deviates from their function, reality protests. Richard being lazy isn't a character flaw. It's a cosmic mandate. The universe needs him to be lazy, the same way it needs Gumball to be sarcastic. These aren't choices, they're requirements, and this reframes every single character in the show. Nicole's terrifying competence and barely contained rage? Required. Aeneas's precocious intelligence? Required. Darwin's unfailing optimism and loyalty? Required. Every character trait that seems like it was chosen by the character is actually imposed by the world. They're performing themselves, playing parts in a show about their own lives, and the show won't let them improvise. There's something beautiful and horrible about that. Beautiful because it means every character is essential. The world literally breaks without them being who they are. Horrible because it means nobody has free will. You are who the story needs you to be, and if you try to be something else, the void is waiting. I want to talk about the animation now, because the way this show looks is itself a conspiracy of sorts. The Amazing World of Gumball is one of the most visually diverse animated shows ever produced. Every character exists in a different art style. Gumball and the Wattersons are 2D animated. Many background characters are puppets, or stop-motion objects, or live-action photograph, or 3D CGI model, or clip art, or crayon drawing. The backgrounds are real photographs of actual location, primarily in the San Francisco Bay Area, where Elmore is loosely set. The show's visual identity is a collision of every possible animation technique, and it works because the show commits to the idea that Elmore is a place where all these styles coexist naturally. But here's the thing, if Elmore is a production, if the metafictional interpretation is correct, and this is a show within a show, then the reason different characters exist in different art styles is because they were created at different time by different artists with different tools. Gumball looks the way he does because he was designed for this show. But a character like Ocho, the 8-bit spider, looks the way he does because he's from a different era of animation. And a character like Sussy, who is literally a live-action puppet chin with googly eyes, looks the way she does because she's a different kind of performance entirely. The visual diversity isn't just an aesthetic choice. In the conspiracy framework, it's evidence. Evidence that Elmore's characters were assembled from different sources, different media, different generations of creative work. Ben Bacalé himself has said that many of the characters were based on rejected characters from his earlier commercial work at Studio AKA. He literally recycled characters from other projects and put them all in the same school. In real life, that's a clever creative decision. In the fiction, it means Elmore Junior High is populated by characters who weren't originally designed to coexist, thrown together by a world that doesn't care about visual consistency as long as the stories keep running. And the Inquisition, the finale, makes this explicit by having Superintendent Evil try to force everyone into a single, consistent art style. The threat isn't physical violence or world domination, it's aesthetic homogeneity. The villain's plan is to make everyone look the same, and the show treats this as the worst possible outcome. Because in a world where diversity of form is the fundamental principle, where the whole point is that a 2D cat and a CGI robot and a stop-motion banana can be friends, forcing uniformity is tantamount to destroying the world. This is why Gumball's animation philosophy matters to the conspiracy discussion. The show's visual identity isn't just pretty, it's philosophical. It's saying that reality is a collage, a mixtape, a messy assemblage of things that don't belong together, but somehow work. And the void, the force that erases mistakes, is the enemy of that mess. The void wants order. The void wants consistency. The void wants things to make sense. And Gumball, at its heart, is a show that refuses to make sense, gloriously and defiantly, because making sense would mean giving up everything that makes it special. Bacalé put it perfectly in an interview when he said the show's visual style is basically designed to be a big sandbox with all sorts of toys that you can use. And you can integrate other toys because it's such a mess visually in the first place that it doesn't look out of place when you bring something new into it. That's not just a production philosophy, that's Elmore's survival strategy. The world keeps itself alive by being too weird to categorize, too diverse to homogenize, too much of a mess for the void to know where to start. Alright, let me give you a few more conspiracies before we start winding down, because there are some that don't fit neatly into the main mythology, but are too weird and fascinating to skip. First, Sarah G. Lotto, the ice cream girl. She's obsessed with Gumball and Darwin. She writes fan fiction about them. She has a body pillow. She provides scene transition music with a tape recorder. And in The Fan, her debut episode, she does something that nobody talks about enough. She hums the closing credits theme. Gumball doesn't recognize it. He's never heard it before. But Sarah knows it, because Sarah knows she's in a show. This isn't confirmed. It's never explicitly stated. But the evidence is staggering. In The Test, Sarah is the one who understands what's happening when Tobias takes over as protagonist. She uses the word protagonist. She recognizes narrative structure changes in real time. She takes notes on the decline of storytelling quality as the show shifts to a sitcom format. She knows things about the mechanics of their world that no one else knows. The conspiracy is that Sarah is a fan, not a fan of Gumball the person, a fan of Gumball the show. She exists within the fiction as a viewer of the fiction, and her obsessive fandom gives her a perspective on reality that no other character has. She's us. She's the audience, inserted into the story, watching from the inside. And she handles it better than Rob did, because instead of being horrified by the knowledge, she's delighted. She's living her best life inside her favorite show. And the show never confirms or denies this. It just lets Sarah be weird and lets you draw your own conclusion. Second conspiracy, Nicole's path. There are multiple episodes that hint at Nicole Watterson having a backstory that is deeply, almost supernaturally intense. In The Fury, it's revealed that she trained in martial arts with a woman named Yuki, and their rivalry reached levels of destruction that border on supernatural. In The Choices, we see the alternate timelines of Nicole's life. What would have happened if she'd made different decisions? And some of those timelines involve her becoming a master of combat. a world-class athlete, a force of nature. The conspiracy is that Nicole is the most powerful being in Elmore, but is constrained by her role as the mom. She's channeling a lifetime of suppressed rage and potential into keeping her family alive, and the show periodically lets her off the leash for action sequences that feel like they belong in a completely different anime. Nicole is playing a part, the tired, overworked mother, but underneath that part is something the universe can barely contain, and the show does nothing to dissuade this reading. If anything, it leans into it. Nicole is consistently portrayed as the most competent, most dangerous, most capable character in the entire series. She could probably defeat the Void through sheer force of maternal fury if the show gave her the chance. But she doesn't get the chance because her role doesn't call for it, and the universe, as we've established, enforces role. Let me go deeper on Nicole, because I think she's the key to understanding something crucial about how Gumball's conspiracy works on an emotional level. In The Choices, a season 6 episode, the show does something extraordinary. It takes Nicole back to the moment she met Richard and shows us every possible path her life could have taken. There's a timeline where she becomes a corporate executive, a timeline where she's a martial arts champion, a timeline where she's alone and successful and empty. And in every timeline except the one she chose, the one where she marries Richard and has her chaotic, broke, dysfunctional, beautiful family, she's miserable. Powerful, yes. Respected, yes. Accomplished, yes. But miserable. And the timeline she chooses, the one we watch every episode, involves marrying the laziest man in Elmore, having 3 children who cause constant destruction, working herself to the bone at a job she hates to support a family that costs more than it earned, and suppressing a level of combat skill and raw power that would make her a legend in any other context. She chose limitation. She chose the role of the mom over the role of the warrior, or the executive, or the free woman. And the show frames this choice as the right one. Not because being a mom is inherently better, but because Nicole chose love. She chose connection over power. She chose the messy, imperfect, infinitely precious reality of a family over the clean, impressive, emotionally empty alternative. And here's the conspiracy angle. Nicole's power isn't suppressed by the universe. It's suppressed by her own choice. Unlike Rob, who was forced into a role he didn't want, or Gumball, whose protagonist status is a cosmic mandate, Nicole chose her constraint. She chose to be the mom. She chose to channel her infinite potential into keeping her family safe rather than ruling the world. And that makes her, in a weird way, the freest character in the entire show. She's the one person in Elmore who isn't a prisoner of her narrative role, because her role is something she actively, continuously, freely chooses, which reframes the entire conspiracy. If the universe enforces roles, if the void erases the useless and the status quo resets the deviant, then Nicole is the proof that you can accept a role and still be free within it. You can be the mom and also be the most terrifying force in Elmore. You can be constrained by your circumstances and still define yourself on your own term. You just have to choose it every day, every episode, even when the universe makes it exhausting. And the show never once suggests Nicole made the wrong choice. When she hulks out, when her eyes glow green and her muscles swell and she demolishes whatever's threatening her family, the show isn't saying, "Look how scary the mom is." It's saying, "Look how much she loves them." The rage is love. The power is love. The role she chose is love. And love, in Gumball, is the one force that the void can't erase and the reset button can't undo. The rivalry between Nicole and Yuki, her former martial arts training partner from The Fury, is itself a mini conspiracy. Yuki appears out of nowhere as this impossibly powerful adversary. Their fight literally destroys building, and then Yuki leaves, and nobody mentions the fight again. Until the revival, when Bacalé specifically said in an interview that Yuki is back and that the Yuki-Nicole story would be explored further. The Nicole conspiracy, the idea that she's hiding an entire lifetime of suppressed power and unresolved relationships, is still active, still developing. Third conspiracy, Rachel Wilson. This is one of my favorites because it's the perfect intersection of real-world production decision and in-universe mythology. Rachel Wilson is Tobias's older sister. She appeared frequently as a background character in season 1 and had her only major role in The Party, where she threw a house party and ended up kissing Darwin on the cheek. She was a normal, functional character with relationships and personality and a place in the world. And then, starting in season 2, she just vanished, gone, not killed off, not explained away, just absent. For 5 entire seasons, Rachel Wilson simply did not appear. The real world reason is that Ben Bacalé and the show's staff didn't like how Rachel turned out in the party, her design, her voice, the way she fit into the show. So they phased her out. A creative decision, the kind of thing that happens in production all the time. But here's where it gets conspiratorial. In universe, Rachel's disappearance mirrors exactly what happens to characters who get sent to the void. She was deemed unnecessary by the creators, the people who control Elmore's reality, and she was erased. Not dramatically, not with a storyline, but quietly, the way the void works. And the evidence is eerily consistent with the void's method. Family photos of the Wilsons that appear in later episodes don't include Rachel. She's been removed from the visual record, just like Molly was removed from the yearbook photos in The Void. In Darwin's yearbook, a miniseries that aired after the main show ended, Darwin asks Tobias what happened to Rachel, and Tobias says she went to college, which is the in-universe explanation. But fans have pointed out something uncomfortable. If Rachel just went to college, why was she erased from family photos? You don't remove someone from photographs because they're at university. You remove them because they've been sent to the void. The gone to college explanation sounds exactly like the kind of false memory the void would implant. A convenient, believable narrative to explain the gap left behind. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying the show confirmed Rachel is in the void. It didn't. The college explanation exists, and it's probably the intended answer. But the fact that her disappearance maps so perfectly onto the void's mechanic, the erasure from photos, the convenient explanation, the lack of anyone questioning it for 5 seasons, is either a remarkable coincidence or the show doing what it always does, leaving the conspiracy door open just wide enough for you to walk through. There's even a doll resembling Rachel that appears in a cage inside the Awesome Store van in the rewrite. If that's not the show winking at the conspiracy, I don't know what is. Let me also talk about The Joy, Season 3, Episode 4, because it's one of the darkest episodes the show ever made, and it has conspiracy implications that I think get overlooked. The premise: Richard gives Gumball and Darwin a wonder hug, so powerful it causes a rainbow-colored mushroom explosion. The boys arrive at school in a state of manic, uncontrollable happiness. Their pupils dilate. They start singing in auto-tune. They cough up rainbow-colored fluid. And then the happiness starts spreading through hugs like a virus. The episode is shot almost entirely on a camcorder in the style of found footage horror films like Cloverfield and Reese C. Miss Simeon, normally the show's most reliable antagonist, becomes the protagonist, the lone survivor, trying to document the outbreak and find a cure. She watches as student after student gets infected, transformed into smiling, hugging, rainbow-drooling zombie. She watches Aeneas get taken. She watches the entire school fall. And in the end, she falls too. The last shot is her being infected, recording her own destruction, saying, "This story has come to a happy ending," as rainbow liquid spews from her mouth. The episode never resolved. We never see a cure. We never see the aftermath. The joy virus simply happened. And then the next episode, everything is fine, which is, of course, another status quo reset. But here's the conspiracy angle. The joy virus is happiness weaponized. It's enforced positivity. It's the show taking the concept of a happy cartoon and turning it into body horror. The infected students are smiling. They're hugging. They look like they're having the time of their lives. And they're terrifying. Because the happiness isn't chosen, it's inflicted. It's contagious. It eliminates sadness, complexity, nuance. It turns people into one-dimensional vessels of manufactured joy. And isn't that what a certain kind of children's television does? Isn't the joy virus a metaphor for the pressure on animated shows to be relentlessly, aggressively, mindlessly positive? The void erases what's boring. The joy virus eliminates what's sad. Both of them are mechanisms of control, designed to keep Elmore within certain parameters, entertaining, palatable, fun. And the joy is the show screaming through the medium of found footage horror. Forced happiness is not the same as real happiness. Mandated positivity is not positivity at all. It's a virus. The title card for The Joy uses music similar to In the House in a Heartbeat from 28 Days Later. The show knows exactly what genre it's playing in. And the fact that the joy virus is triggered by Richard, by a parental figure, by someone who genuinely loves his children and just wants them to be happy, makes it even more disturbing. Sometimes the things that destroy us come from a place of love. Sometimes the people trying to make us happy are the ones making it impossible for us to feel anything real. I keep coming back to the idea that Gumball's conspiracies work because they're not just about the show. They're about us, about the way we live, about the systems that shape our emotional lives, and the institutions that decide what we're allowed to feel. The void is censorship. The joy virus is toxic positivity. The status quo reset is the way we forget trauma and move on as if nothing happened. The protagonist role is the way society decides who matters and who doesn't. Every conspiracy in this show has a real-world parallel that makes it resonate beyond its animated context, and the show trusts you to find those parallels yourself. It never lectures. It never explains. It just shows you a school full of rainbow zombies and lets you figure out what that means. Fourth conspiracy, and this is a quick one. Mr. Small was right about everything. In The Void, he's the conspiracy theorist with the tinfoil hat. He's the one who noticed things disappearing. He's the one who knew about the void before anyone else. And the show played him as the comic relief, the kooky hippie whose paranoia turns out to be justified. But here's the thing, Mr. Small is always right. In almost every episode where he has a significant role, his weird beliefs and unconventional wisdom turn out to be accurate. His van does run on good vibe. There is a conspiracy. The world is hiding things. The conspiracy about Mr. Small is that he's the show's prophet, and nobody listens to him because he delivers his truths in the most unbelievable packaging possible. He's the Cassandra of Elmore, cursed to know the truth and never be taken seriously. And the tinfoil hat, the symbol of his supposed madness, is the only thing that lets him remember the truth. Without it, the void takes his memory, just like it takes everything else. There's one more conspiracy I want to address before we start closing, and it's the big one. The one that encompasses everything else. And it's this. What if the entire meta-narrative of Gumball, the void, the cancellation metaphor, the characters being fictional, is itself a metaphor? What if the show isn't actually about the mechanics of television production? What if it's about something much more universal? Because think about it. What does the void actually represent? It erases things that are deemed mistakes. It removes anything that doesn't serve a purpose. It enforces the status quo and punishes deviation. It's invisible, all-powerful, and operates without anyone's consent. It sounds a lot like society, like the social mechanisms that marginalize people who don't fit in, that erase the contributions of people deemed boring or useless, that enforce conformity and punish different. And what does Rob's story represent? He's a person who was deemed worthless by the system, erased from society, and then punished again for trying to survive. He was ignored when he asked for help. He was broken when he tried to return. He was forced into a role, the villain, that didn't fit him because the world didn't have space for him to be anything else. And the only people who treated him with kindness were the very people the system had designated as his enemy. And what does Gumball's protagonist status represent? He's the person the world revolves around. Not because he's the best or the smartest, but because he's the one the system has decided matter. His flaws are tolerated. His mistakes are forgiven. His narrative gets to continue, while others are cut short. He's privileged, in the most literal sense of the word. The world gives him privileges it denies to others, simply because of the role he was assigned. I don't think this reading is a stretch. I think it's deliberately embedded in the show's DNA. Bockelay has talked about wanting the show to work on multiple levels, funny for kids, meaningful for adults, and the metafictional framework is the mechanism that allows that. Kids see a funny cartoon about a cat and his fish brother. Adults see a sophisticated meditation on the structures that shape our lives, the roles we're assigned, the systems that determine who matters and who gets erased. And the show's refusal to deny its own conspiracies is part of the message. Because in real life, the systems that marginalize people also refuse to admit they exist. The mechanisms of social erasure are designed to be invisible. You're not supposed to notice the missing locker. You're not supposed to ask about the person who used to be here. You're supposed to accept the status quo and move on. And Gumball, through its mythology, is saying, look for what isn't there. Look for what doesn't make sense. The conspiracy is real, and the first step to fighting it is to take off the tinfoil hat and remember. I want to stay with this a little longer because I think there's something important about the way Gumball handles these themes compared to how other media handles them. In most conspiracy fiction, in The Matrix, in The Truman Show, in Westworld, in every what-if reality is fake story, the revelation that the world is constructed is presented as a climactic moment, the red pill moment. The moment when the protagonist discovers the truth and everything changes forever. Gumball doesn't do that. Gumball has given its characters dozens of red pill moments. The void, the signal, the test, the money, the disaster. And every single time, the characters learn something devastating about the nature of their reality, and then they forget, or they're censored, or the knowledge is taken away. The show keeps offering revelation and then withdrawing them, like a wave that approaches the shore and retreats before it can touch your feet. And I think that's actually more realistic than the red pill narrative. In real life, moments of clarity about the systems we live in are rarely permanent. You have a flash of insight about how the economy works, or how social media manipulates your emotion, or how your job is structured to keep you compliant. And then you go back to work on Monday, and the insight fades. The system doesn't need to dramatically suppress the truth. It just needs you to be too busy, too tired, too comfortable to hold on to it. The truth reveals itself and then recedes over and over. And we live in the space between knowing and forgetting. That's what Gumball's characters do. They live in the space between knowing and forgetting. Gumball has been to the void 3 times and can't remember any of them. He's almost figured out he's on television and been cut off by glitches. He's seen his world reduce to storyboards and post-it notes and then come back to normal. He knows on some level that he can't quite access, that his world is constructed and fragile and temporary. And he keeps living anyway. He keeps going to school. He keeps annoying Darwin. He keeps chasing Penny. He keeps being exactly who he is. Not because he doesn't know the truth, but because the truth doesn't change the fact that his life is worth living. That's the most profound thing this show has to say about conspiracy. Not wake up or fight the system, or take the red pill. Just keep living. Keep choosing to be yourself. Keep loving the people around you. The system exists. The conspiracy is real. The world is constructed. And your life within that construction is real too. Both things are true at the same time, and neither one cancels out the other. I think about this a lot in the context of how we consume media in general. We know that television is produced. We know that our favorite characters are performed by actors, written by writers, animated by artists. We know that the emotions we feel watching a show are, in some sense, manufactured. The product of deliberate creative decision, designed to make us feel specific things at specific time. And yet we feel them anyway. We cry when characters we know aren't real experience loss. We laugh when they stumble. We care about their relationships and their growth and their futures. We know the conspiracy. We know it's all made up. And we choose to engage anyway, because the engagement is worth having. Gumball's characters are doing the same thing we're doing. They're choosing to live inside a constructed reality, because the alternative, knowledge without engagement, truth without feeling, awareness without love, is the void. The void is what happens when you see through the construction and decide that nothing matters. The joy virus is what happens when you refuse to see the construction and force yourself to be happy about it. And Gumball, the character, the show, the whole beautiful, messy, mixed media production is the middle path. The path where you know the truth and you feel the feeling and you keep going because the going is the point. All right, I think I really am winding down now. For real this time. There's one more thing I want to mention before we close, and it's about the upcoming Gumball movie. It was announced in February 2021 and officially greenlit in September 2021. The premise, as described by Cartoon Network, involves Gumball's biggest fan finding a missing episode of the show and accidentally opening a portal that connects Gumball's cartoon world to the real one. The characters would cross over into our world, and the movie would serve as the epic conclusion to the original series. That premise, a fan finding a missing episode that opens a portal between fiction and reality, is itself a conspiracy made manifest. It's the show's entire mythology, distilled into a movie pitch. The missing episode is the thing the void erased. The portal is the breach between the other place and Elmore. The fan is us, the audience, the people who've been watching this whole time, keeping the conspiracy alive, keeping the questions alive, keeping Elmore alive through the simple act of caring. And if Bakalay's personal theory about the show's cosmology gets revealed in the movie, if we finally learn what the void really is, and what the other place means, and whether Banana Barbara is predicting or creating the future, then the movie isn't just a conclusion to a TV series. It's the resolution of a conspiracy that's been running for over a decade. A conspiracy that spans 280 episodes across 2 shows, multiple specials, and a fandom that has been theorizing, debating, and building wikis for 13 years. That's an unprecedented level of commitment to a mystery. I can't think of another animated series, or honestly, any series in any medium, that has maintained a single, coherent, unresolved conspiracy across that kind of time span. Lost came close, but stumbled at the finish line. Gravity Falls had a 2-season mystery that it resolved brilliantly, but briefly. Gumball has been running its conspiracy since 2014, and it's still going, still unresolved, still denying nothing. And maybe that's the real conspiracy. Maybe the greatest trick the amazing world of Gumball ever pulled was convincing us that the answer was coming. That if we just kept watching, kept theorizing, kept paying attention, the mystery would resolve itself. Maybe the answer has been in front of us the whole time, hidden in plain sight, disguised as a joke about a blue cat who can't remember his own name. Or maybe there is no answer. Maybe the conspiracy is the answer. Maybe the act of wondering is itself the point. And the void is kept at bay, not by revelation, but by curiosity. I don't know. And honestly, I don't want to know. Not yet. Not until the movie. Not until Bacalé is ready to tell it. Because right now, in this moment, sitting with these questions at whatever hour of the night it is where you are, the not knowing is the most beautiful part. The conspiracies are alive. The questions are humming. The void is lurking, but it hasn't consumed anything yet. And Elmore is still there, weird and wonderful and impossible. A world made of photographs and drawings and stop-motion puppets and live-action chins with googly eyes. A world where a blue cat and a goldfish and a fairy and a broken cyclops and a prophetic banana and a terrifying mother and a magnificently useless father all live together in a town that shouldn't exist but does, because someone is telling their story and someone else is listening. Okay, I think we've gone deep enough for tonight. We've been through the void and back. We've tracked Rob's journey from nobody to nemesis to protector. We've watched Banana Barbara paint apocalypse after apocalypse. We've seen reality degrade into post-it note. We've watched a rainbow cloud kid steal the protagonist role and turn the world into a bad sitcom. And we've sat with the question that underlies all of it. What does it mean to live in a world that might not be real and to decide that the living matters anyway? The Amazing World of Gumball is not the show most people think it is. It's not just a funny cartoon, although it is funny, devastatingly, consistently, creatively funny, in a way that most comedies could never dream of matching. It's a show with a cosmology, a mythology, a philosophy. It asks questions that most live-action prestige dramas wouldn't dare to touch, and it asks them through the medium of a blue cat who once got his head stuck in a toilet. And the conspiracy, the ones we talked about tonight, and the dozens more we didn't have time for, are never denied. Not the void, not the simulation theory, not the cancellation metaphor, not Banana Barbara's reality-altering painting, not Sarah's metafictional awareness, not the awesome store's divine economy, not Rob's discovery that he's fictional, not the theory that Gumball's personality is a cosmic requirement, not the theory that Nicole could destroy the world if she wanted to. Not one single conspiracy is walked back, explained away, or definitively debunked, because that's the show's final trick. By refusing to deny its conspiracies, it keeps them alive. It keeps the question alive. It keeps the mystery of Elmore alive, buzzing and humming and crackling like static on a television screen, like the void's eternal background noise, like the sound of a world that knows it's being watched and chooses to keep performing anyway. Ben Bacalé has his theory. He's saving it for the movie. And when the movie comes, if the movie comes, maybe we'll finally know. Maybe we'll learn what the void really is and what the other place means, and whether Banana Barbara is an oracle or an author, or something else entirely. Maybe we'll get the answer to the conspiracy. But honestly, I hope we don't. I hope the movie gives us something better than answers. I hope it gives us what the show has always given us. The feeling that there's something under the surface. Something vast and strange and wonderful. Something that makes you want to keep watching and keep wondering and keep talking about it late at night with strangers on the internet. Because that's what the amazing world of Gumball is really about. Not the answer, the wondering, the glorious, conspiracy-fueled, tinfoil hat-wearing, void-defying act of wondering. If you made it this far, thank you. If you're still awake, I appreciate you. And if you're already asleep, I hope this drifted through your dreams like Molly drifting through the void, quiet, peaceful, unaware that anything was ever wrong. Good night, everyone. Sleep well. Actually, you know what? Before we close, I lied. We're not done. I said we were winding down, but there's too much left. And the night is long, and you're either still listening or you've fallen asleep, and this is just background noise for your dream. And either way, I want to keep going. So let's keep going. I want to go back to the finale, and I mean the season 2 finale, not the series finale, because Gumball is one of those rare shows that has multiple episodes called finale adjacent things that all mean different things. The finale aired at the end of season 2, and it is, without exaggeration, one of the most quietly radical pieces of animated television ever made. And the conspiracy it reveals is one that every single cartoon in history has been hiding. The episode opens with the Wattersons on the couch, looking through their family photo album. They're reminiscing about their adventures, laughing about the time the house flooded, the time they grew mustaches, the time they fell 4,000 feet onto a sidewalk and walked away without a bruise. And Gumball notices something in one of the photos. They all look different. Their season 1 design, their old eyes, their old proportion. The show is literally pointing at itself and saying, hey, We used to look different. That's weird, right? And then the doorbell rings. Mrs. Jotunheim is at the door, and she's furious because her son Hector went on a rampage that destroyed 75% of Elmore, something that happened in a previous episode, and the Wattersons are being held responsible for the damages. And then Principal Brown shows up to announce that Gumball and Darwin have to restart school from kindergarten because, and I quote, "All you do at school is argue about your little problems and aggravate students and staff members until they go nuts and chase you through the halls, none of which makes for a decent education." And then Richard gets a call from the police about reckless driving incidents from earlier episodes. And then Santa Claus is pressing charges for the Wattersons running him over in the Christmas special. The past has caught up. Everything they did in every previous episode has consequences, and those consequences are all hitting at once. And here's the devastating punchline. Richard, of all people, explains how this usually works. He says that when he goes to prison, he's suddenly just not in there anymore. No escape, no pardon, no explanation. One scene he's in prison, the next scene he's not. That's the status quo reset. That's the cartoon reset button. That's the mechanism by which every sitcom, every cartoon, every episodic comedy erases the consequences of the previous episode to return to baseline. And the finale asks, what if the reset button broke? What follows is pure chaos. The entire town turns on the Wattersons. Every character they've ever wronged comes for revenge. It's a continuity avalanche, a cascade of callbacks and references to dozens of previous episodes, all of them coming due simultaneously. The Wattersons are chased, attacked, surrounded, and in the final moment, as the angry mob breaks into their house and seemingly prepares to kill them, Gumball delivers the most meta line in the entire series up to that point. The only thing that can save us is reality being completely reset by some kind of magic device. And then the episode just ends. Hard cut to credit. No resolution, no magic device, no reset. Just the acknowledgement that the reset is needed and the faith that it will happen, because it always happens, because that's how cartoons work. And it does happen. Season 3 starts, and everything is fine. The Wattersons are fine. The house is fine. Nobody mentions the finale. The reset worked. Off screen, silently, automatically, the universe corrected itself, which is exactly what Gumball predicted, which is exactly how it's always worked, which is the conspiracy. I want to spend more time with this, because I think the finale is doing something that goes beyond just being meta. It's asking a question about justice. In a world with a reset button, can there be consequences? Can there be accountability? The Wattersons have caused enormous damage across 75 episodes. They've destroyed property, endangered lives, caused emotional trauma to dozens of characters. In any normal world, they'd face real consequences, legal, financial, social. But they don't, because the reset button exists. The universe forgives them, not because they've earned forgiveness, but because the structure of the show requires it. And that's uncomfortable, right? Because it means the Wattersons can do anything, hurt anyone, break anything, and the universe will always clean it up. They're immune to consequences. Not because they're good people. Nicole literally admits, this is it, the end of the Wattersons, before Gumball calls for the reset. But because they're the main characters, the show can't continue without them. And the show continuing is more important than justice. Think about what that means for every other character in Elmore. Larry, who works every job and gets abused by the Wattersons constantly. Mr. Robinson, whose property gets destroyed every other episode. Miss Simeon, who has to deal with Gumball and Darwin's chaos in her classroom. All of these characters suffer real harm, and the reset button ensures that none of them ever gets resolution. They're stuck in an eternal cycle of being wronged, and then being forced to forget they were wronged, ready to be wronged again next episode. And the show knows this is unfair. The finale exists specifically to acknowledge the unfairness. The episode is the show saying, yes, we know this is messed up. Yes, we know the reset button is a moral problem. Yes, we know the Wattersons get away with everything, and that's not okay. It's a confession, an act of self-awareness from a show that specializes in self-awareness. And then, brilliantly, maddeningly, it uses the very mechanism it's criticizing to resolve the episode. The reset button saves them again. The show can't help itself. The structure wins. This connects to everything else we've discussed tonight. The void erases characters who are boring. That's a consequence, without accountability. The signal censors characters who get too close to the truth. That's suppression of awareness. The money ties existence to budget. That's economic determinism. And the finale reveals the reset button. That's the erasure of consequences. All of these mechanisms work together to create a world that maintains itself at the expense of the individuals living in it. Elmore isn't a democracy. It isn't even a dictatorship. It's a machine, a self-correcting, self-preserving narrative machine that will sacrifice anyone and anything to keep the story going. And the conspiracy is that no one inside the machine can see it clearly enough to do anything about it. Gumball can feel it. He can name it. He can say, "We need a reality reset." But he can't control it. He can't decide when it happens or who it protects. He just has to trust that it will. And it does, every time, without fail. Which makes it the most reliable thing in Elmore, and also the most terrifying. Because the finale asks, what if the reset button broke? It's the show pulling back the curtain on its own narrative structure and showing you the gears that keep the machine running. Every cartoon has a reset button. The finale is the first time I've ever seen a cartoon point at the reset button and say, look at this thing. Look at how weird it is that this exists. Look at what it means that our world has to be reset every 11 minutes so the next story can happen. And through the conspiracy lens, this connects directly to everything else. The void erases mistake. The signal censors truth. The money ties existence to production budget. The test enforces narrative roles. And the finale reveals the status quo reset, the fundamental mechanism of episodic television, as an in-universe force that the characters can sense and rely on, but never fully understand. They know it's there. They know it will save them. They just don't know why. The conspiracy is that the status quo isn't natural. It's imposed, and the characters live inside it, subject to it, shaped by it, unable to escape it, and mostly unable to see it, except in the moments when the show lets them peek behind the curtain. Those are the moments that make Gumball special. Let me tell you about something that happened between seasons that most people don't think about in conspiracy terms, but probably should. Between Season 2 and Season 3, the show changed voice actors for Gumball and Darwin. Logan Grove and Kwesi Boki had been voicing the characters since the show premiered in 2011, but by 2013, they were teenagers, and their voices had changed. The show addressed this in The Kid, the first episode of Season 3, by making Gumball and Darwin's voice change as a plot point. Their voices deepen, the world reacts with confusion and discomfort, and eventually, new voices emerge. What's conspiratorial about this is that it happened again, and again, and again. Gumball has been voiced by Logan Grove, Jacob Hopkins, Nicholas Cantu, and Alcaio Thiele. Darwin has been voiced by Kwesi Boki, Terrell Ransom Jr., Christian J. Simon, and Hero Hunter. That's 4 different humans performing each character across the show's lifetime. And every single time the voice changes, the show treats it as something that just happened, a natural phenomenon. Voices change, people change, the world adjusts. But think about what that means within the metafictional framework. The characters aren't changing their voices. The people inside the characters are being replaced. The actors, the real, living humans who perform these roles, are cycled in and out as they age, and the characters persist regardless. The soul changes, but the body stays the same. Or maybe it's the opposite. The body changes, but the role stays the same. Either way, there's something profoundly unsettling about a show that acknowledges, within its own fiction, that the people who give it life are temporary. And the wonderfully weird world of Gumball even addresses this directly in The Rewrite, where Gumball and Darwin notice that their voices have changed, that their designs have shifted, that they never celebrate birthday, that they seem to be trapped in an eternal loop of adolescence. These are the gaps in the simulation. These are the seams in the fabric. And the show uses them not as plot holes, but as evidence that the character's world is constructed, maintained, and occasionally patched by forces they can't perceive. I want to take a tangent here, because I've been thinking about this for a while, and I think it's relevant. There's a concept in philosophy called the ship of Thesius. If you replace every plank of a ship, one at a time, until none of the original planks remain, is it still the same ship? And Gumball is, I think, a ship of Theseus story. Every voice actor has been replaced. The show's title has changed. The animation studio has shifted. The showrunner is different. The network is different. It went from Cartoon Network to Hulu. Even the fundamental question of whether it's a children's show has evolved, because the audience that started watching in 2011 has grown up. The ship has had every plank replaced, and yet it's still recognizably Gumball. Gumball still walks through Elmore with Darwin. Nicole still works too hard and loves too fiercely. Richard still sits on the couch. The show persists. And within the fiction, the ship of Theseus isn't just a thought experiment. It's the mechanism by which the void is kept at bay. As long as the show keeps running, as long as the story keeps being told, even if every component changes, the world survives. The moment the story stops, the void comes. That's what the Inquisition showed us. That's what The Rewrite confirmed. Elmore's existence is contingent on the continued act of narration. The story is what keeps the void away. The revival makes this even more explicit. In the wonderfully weird world of Gumball, The characters wake up after 6 years of dormancy. They're covered in dust. They're disoriented. They don't know how much time has passed. Eric Fountain, the revival's series director, joked in an interview that it's like waking up from being unconscious. You have no sense of how much time lapsed. And Bacalé described the revival process as being like getting CPR. When you get given CPR and they reanimate you with the pad, that's kind of how it came about. Reanimate. That word choice isn't accidental. To reanimate means to bring back to life, but it also means to animate again, to resume the process of animation that was interrupted. The characters didn't die when the show ended. They were deanimated, paused, suspended. And when the show returned, they were reanimated, brought back to life through the act of production. It's the most literal possible interpretation of the show's central conspiracy. The characters exist because someone is animating them. When the animation stops, they stop. When it resumes, they resume. And the 6-year gap from 2019 to 2025 exists in-universe. It's not ignored or hand-waved. The characters acknowledge that time has passed. The world has changed. The internet has evolved. Social media has become more central to daily life. The revival's new episodes tackle topics like online culture and streaming, things that didn't exist in the same way when the original series ended. The characters are in the same eternal adolescence they've always been in, but the world around them has moved forward, and they have to adapt. This creates a fascinating tension. The characters can't age. The universe won't let them, because their eternal youth is a structural requirement. But the world around them does age. Technology advances, culture shifts, references update. The show acknowledges the passage of real time while denying the passage of fictional time. And the characters, trapped in that contradiction, have to navigate a world that grows more complex while they stay the same. The conspiracy implications of this are enormous. If the characters are aware, on some level, that time moves differently for them than for the world, that they've been 12 for over a decade, that they've never had a birthday party, that their bodies change with new designs and new voices while their ages don't, then they're living in a state of perpetual cognitive dissonance. They know something is wrong. They can feel the gap between their experience and reality. And the show's metafictional episode, the signal, the test, the finale, the rewrite, are the moments when that cognitive dissonance breaks through into conscious awareness. The rewrite, in particular, addresses this head-on. The revival's season 2 finale has Gumball and Darwin noticing the accumulation of inconsistencies in their world. The voice changes, the design changes, the birthdays that never happen, the time that doesn't pass. They start to wonder, they start to ask questions. And Rob, now the guardian of Elmore's fictional reality, has to scramble to prevent them from asking too many questions, because the truth, that they're fictional, that their world is a production, that they exist only because someone is telling their story, would trigger the void. The episode turns the awesome store shopkeeper into a comedically incompetent screenwriter who keeps making mistakes in the script of reality. He writes, "and stuff," and the words literally materialize in the town. He writes that the characters can't avoid a sale at the mall, and the mall physically chases them down the street. The script of reality is being written in real time by people who aren't very good at it, and the characters can see the seam. They can see the bad writing, and the bad writing is what's making them suspicious. There's something beautifully self-deprecating about that. The show's writers, the actual real-life writers working in offices in London and Germany, are satirizing their own craft through the character of the shopkeeper. They're admitting that writing is hard, that maintaining continuity is hard, that keeping characters from asking uncomfortable questions is hard, and they're turning that difficulty into a plot point. The conspiracy doesn't work perfectly. The cover-up has holes, the script has error, and those errors are what create the opportunities for characters to glimpse the truth. It reminds me of something showrunner Matt Lazell said in an interview. Inherent in Gumball's DNA is this kind of punk rock spirit trying to push boundaries, trying to explore things that other shows haven't explored. That punk rock spirit is what drives the conspiracy. The show isn't content to just be funny. It wants to be meta-funny. It wants to be philosophically funny. It wants to make you laugh and then make you think about why you're laughing and whether the act of laughing is itself part of the system. And here's the thing about the rewrite that really gets me. Rob's solution to the crisis, his way of saving Elmore from the truth, is to make himself the villain again. He realizes that if Gumball and Darwin think all the weirdness is being caused by their nemesis, they'll have an explanation that doesn't involve the fundamental nature of reality. They'll think it's just Rob being Rob, a villain doing villain thing. Problem solved. Mystery contained. Conspiracy maintained. So Rob writes himself into the script as the bad guy, stages a dramatic confrontation, and lets himself be defeated, falling back into the void. Again, voluntarily this time. He sacrifices himself so the characters can maintain their ignorance, so they can keep being happy, so they can keep being Gumball and Darwin, best brothers, causing chaos, living their lives, never knowing how close they came to the edge. And after he falls, the shopkeeper pulls him out one more time, gives him the shadowy cloak, gives him his new purpose, guardian of Elmore, protector of the fictional, keeper of the conspiracy. Rob went from background extra to forgotten nobody, to broken villain, to reluctant nemesis, to sacrificial hero, to eternal guardian. That's one of the most complete character arcs in animation. And it happened across 12 years and 2 shows, told in pieces, scattered across episodes that most viewers probably watched out of order on a streaming platform. The show did that. A cartoon about a blue cat and a goldfish gave a background character a 12-year redemption arc that ends with him becoming the secret protector of the universe. And it did it so quietly, so patiently, so elegantly, that you might not even notice it's happening unless you're paying very close attention. Unless you're the kind of person who stays up late watching conspiracy videos about cartoons, which, if you're listening to this, you are. So, well played. You've been paying attention. You've noticed what's not there. You've looked for what doesn't make sense, and you've found it. The conspiracy is real, and it's beautiful, which means, if you think about it, that we, the viewers, the audience, the people watching at 2 in the morning or falling asleep to this video, are part of the system that keeps Elmore alive. Our attention is the budget. Our engagement is the production. Our choice to keep watching is the reason the void hasn't consumed everything. And that's either a beautiful thought or a terrifying one, depending on how much responsibility you want for a fictional town full of sentient bananas and talking toast. I want to come back to something I glossed over earlier, because it deserves more attention. The awesome store. This van, this itinerant, mysterious, seemingly omniscient van that appears exactly when the plot needs it, is one of the most underanalyzed elements of the entire series. And in the revival, it becomes central. We know the awesome store sold Richard the Evil Turtle. We know it sold Richard Darwin, his own adopted son, purchased from a van for what we can only assume was a reasonable price. We know it sold Rob the universal remote. In each case, the item purchased changed the course of the narrative dramatically. The evil turtle created chaos. Darwin became a family member and co-protagonist. The universal remote enabled Rob to rewrite reality. The shopkeeper, the shadowy figure who runs the van, isn't just a merchant. He's a distributor of narrative tools. Every item he sells has a purpose in the story. Nothing he sells is random or incidental. And in the rewrite, he reveals that he knows the show is fictional. He's been aware the whole time. He saved Rob from the void because he needed Rob to help maintain reality. He's been operating as a kind of backstage technician, keeping the show running from behind the scenes. And the conspiracy question is, who is the shopkeeper? Or more precisely, what is the shopkeeper? Is he a character who gained awareness, like Rob? Is he a manifestation of the show's production team? Is he Ben Bakalay's avatar within the fiction? We don't know. The show hasn't told us. Bakalay has hinted that the answer is coming in the movie. But for now, the awesome store sits at the center of a web of unanswered questions, selling items that shape the world to a customer base that never questions where the items come from or what they really do. There's a parallel to real-world storytelling here that I find fascinating. In most narratives, the inciting incident, the things that start the plot moving, just happen. A mysterious letter arrives. A strange event occurs. A weapon falls into the wrong hand. We accept these as narrative conveniences, necessary to get the story started. But Gumball takes those conveniences and gives them a source. The awesome store is where plot devices come from. It's the origin point of narrative momentum. And the fact that it's a van, mobile, unpredictable, appearing and disappearing as needed, makes it the perfect metaphor for the way stories generate their own energy. I've been talking for a long time now, and I want to give you something to take away. Not a theory, not a conclusion, not a definitive answer to any of the conspiracies we've discussed. I want to give you a feeling. The feeling I get when I watch Gumball, really watch it, with attention and intention, not just as background noise, but as a piece of art, is vertigo. Not the scary kind, the kind where you look down from somewhere high and realize how far the ground extends below you. You think you're watching a show about a blue cat, and then you look down and see layers and layers and layers of meaning, philosophy, metafiction, and mythology, all of it holding up this goofy, beautiful, ridiculous cartoon about a kid who can't remember his own name. Ben Bakalay, built something extraordinary. He took a show that was originally pitched as a remedial school for rejected cartoon characters, which the network thought was too sad, and turned it into one of the most philosophically ambitious animated series in history. He created a world where the animation style is the world building, where the fourth wall is a load-bearing structure, where the villain is the most sympathetic character, and where the ultimate threat isn't an evil overlord or a natural disaster, but cancellation. The Void is cancellation. The Void is the end of the story, and every episode of Gumball is an act of defiance against that end. And I want to linger on that original concept for a moment because it tells you everything about where the show's conspiracies come from. A remedial school for rejected cartoon characters. That was the pitch. Characters who had been thrown away by other shows, failed designs from other projects, ideas that didn't work out, all gathered in one place, trying to learn how to be funny, trying to earn their right to exist. The network, specifically Turner Broadcasting executive Daniel Leonard, thought the concept was too depressing, so Bacalé revised it into a family sitcom, kept the visual chaos of having wildly different character designs coexisting in the same world, and launched what would become one of Cartoon Network's most successful shows. But here's the thing, the original concept never went away. It mutated, it evolved, it went underground, and became the show's hidden architecture. Because what is the Void, if not a place where rejected cartoon characters go? What is Rob, if not a failed design trying to find a purpose? What is Elmore Junior High, if not a school full of wildly different characters from different animation traditions, all coexisting in a world that barely makes visual sense? The remedial school for rejected cartoons concept was too sad for a pitch meeting, but it became the emotional and philosophical backbone of the entire series. Bacalé just disguised it. He wrapped it in comedy and family warmth and musical numbers and slapstick. And underneath all of that, the original concept hummed along, powering everything. And I think this is what makes Gumball fundamentally different from every other dark theory show. When fans theorize that the Rugrats are dead, or that the Smurfs represent a totalitarian society, they're imposing darkness onto shows that were never designed to contain it. But when fans theorize about the Void, the simulation, the cancellation metaphor, they're not imposing anything. They're excavating. The darkness was always there, baked into the show's DNA from the moment Bacalé pitched a remedial school for rejected cartoon characters and was told it was too sad. He didn't make it less sad. He made it funnier. He wrapped the sadness in so many layers of comedy and warmth that you can enjoy the show for 6 seasons without ever noticing the abyss underneath. But the abyss is there. It was always there. And the show keeps inviting you to look down if you dare. This is what I mean when I say Gumball is a conspiracy the show never bothered to deny. The conspiracy isn't hidden. It's the foundation. Every episode is built on top of it. The Void is the ground floor. Rob's existential crisis is the basement. Banana Barbara's paintings are the load-bearing wall. And the comedy, the wonderful, chaotic, inventive, heartbreakingly funny comedy, is the wallpaper. Beautiful wallpaper. The kind you could stare at forever without noticing what's behind it, unless someone peels a corner. Unless someone says, look for what's not there. Unless you're the kind of person who lies awake at night and thinks too hard about cartoons. Hi, that's me. And apparently, that's you too. Welcome to the club. We have tinfoil hats and questions that may never be answered. But the questions are extraordinary, and the show that generates them, this impossible, beautiful, mixed media, multi-genre, philosophy hiding as comedy, conspiracy disguised as entertainment, 13-year-long act of creative genius, is one of the great achievements of animated television. And it's not done yet. Bacalé was born in Paris in 1980, moved to London, studied animation at the EMCA in Angoulême, and spent 3 years at Studio AKA working on commercials, where he met Mick Graves, who would become the series director of Gumball. Many of the show's characters were literally based on characters Bacalé had designed for commercial work that never got used. They were rejected, unused. They existed in his portfolio as ideas that hadn't found a home. And then he gave them a home, Elmore, and built a mythology around the very concept of rejection. The Void doesn't just erase boring characters. It erases the kind of characters that get cut from pitches, that don't make it past the concept stage, that exist in artists' sketchbook, but never make it to screen. In that squiggly interview, Bacalé was asked about the mixed media visual style, and he said something that stuck with me. I was obviously trying to get noticed, so I wanted the show to really stand out visually, to give it a chance. Also, I was very influenced by things like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and there is something utterly magical about cartoon characters living in our world. I think it makes them more real and relatable, especially from a child's point of view. I loved the idea that young children would ask their parents to go on holiday to Elmore because they wanted to hang out with Gumball. I wanted them to believe it exists. He wanted children to believe Elmore was real. And the mixed media style, 2D characters on photographic background, CGI objects in 2D spaces, stop motion creatures interacting with hand-drawn ones, is the mechanism that creates that belief. Because when a 2D animated cat walks down a street that's a real photograph of a real street, some part of your brain registers it as more real than pure animation. The backgrounds are real. The characters are drawn on top of reality. And the collision between the two creates a third thing. Not quite animation, not quite live action, but something in between that feels more vivid and present than either. And that in-between space is where the conspiracy lives. Elmore exists in the gap between real and fictional, drawn and photographed, produced and natural. It's a liminal space by design. And the show's metafictional mythology, the void, the signal, the money, is about what happens when characters trapped in that liminal space start to notice the seam. When you live in a world that's half real and half drawn, the boundary between fiction and reality isn't just a philosophical question. It's the floor under your feet. And sometimes, like in The Signal, the floor glitches. And sometimes, like in the Inquisition, the floor opens up. The show was produced by Cartoon Network Studios Europe, specifically by a team at Hanna-Barbera Studios Europe, the successor studio. It was animated by several studios over its run, including Studio Soy in Germany for the revival. The production process itself was multinational and multi-layered, with writers in London, animators in Germany, voice actors in multiple countries, and a visual pipeline that required coordinating 2D animation, 3D CGI, live-action photography, and various other media in every single episode. The show's production was as mixed media as its animation, and that production complexity feeds the conspiracy. Because if you're looking for metaphors for what the void represents, you could do worse than the cutting room floor of a multinational animation production. Every show generates more content than it uses. Characters get designed and never animated. Storylines get outlined and never produced. Jokes get written and never recorded. All of that unused material, all of those mistakes, goes somewhere. In a production pipeline, it goes into a folder on a hard drive, never to be seen again. In Elmore, it goes into the void. Same concept, different metaphor. And Bacalé has been planning this since season 3. He told Squiggly all the way back then that he had designed this overarching plot running all the way to when we finally finished the show. He was building the mythology while building the comedy, constructing a dual-track show that works as both entertainment and philosophy, as both a family sitcom and an existential horror story, as both a joke and a prayer. And the fact that he's kept the central mystery alive across 6 seasons, a revival, and a forthcoming movie without ever definitively confirming or denying the conspiracies is either a masterpiece of restraint or the most elaborate case of indecision in animation history. I choose to believe it's restraint. You know what makes me love this show the most? It's not the cleverness. It's not the metafiction. It's not the conspiracy. It's the warmth. Because for all its philosophical complexity, Gumball never loses sight of the fact that it's a show about a family, about a kid who loves his brother, about a mother who would fight the universe for her children, about a father who is terrible at everything except being present, about a little sister who is smarter than everyone and still needs to be protected, about a goldfish who grew legs because he loved his family so much that evolution decided to cooperate. The conspiracies are fascinating because they're woven into that warmth. The void isn't just a narrative threat, it's the threat of losing the people you love. Rob's tragedy isn't just metafictional, it's the tragedy of feeling invisible, of being ignored by people you desperately want to connect with. Banana Barbara's paintings aren't just prediction, they're a mother trying to protect her world from a future she can see but can't change. The money isn't just about animation budgets, it's about a family choosing between their principles and their survival, and finding a way to preserve both. Every conspiracy in this show is rooted in something human, something real, something that doesn't need a tinfoil hat to understand. And that's why Gumball's conspiracies work where other shows' conspiracies fail. They're not puzzles to be solved. They're feelings to be felt. They're questions to be sat with late at night while the world outside is quiet and the screen glows softly, and you wonder, just for a moment, whether your own reality has seemed. I've been thinking about Rob again. I keep coming back to him. There's a moment in The Nobody, the episode where Rob is first revealed as the disfigured, forgotten figure living in the Wattersons' basement, where he's standing in the dark and his static patches are glowing. He looks like a ghost. He looks like a glitch in the Matrix. He looks like a person who was never meant to exist and somehow does anyway. And Gumball, confronted with this broken, angry, confused person, doesn't fight him, doesn't call the police, doesn't run away. He says, "We'll help you find a purpose." And then he and Darwin spend the rest of the episode trying to figure out what Rob could be. They go through options: friend, nemesis, sidekick, and eventually land on villain, because that's the only empty slot, and they accept it. They accept that their new friend is going to be their enemy, because that's what the world required. There's something so deeply kind about that, and something so deeply sad. Because Gumball and Darwin are doing the best they can with a system they don't fully understand. They can't change the rules. They can't create a new role for Rob that doesn't already exist in the narrative structure. All they can do is help him fill the role that's available, even if that role means he'll hurt them. That's the conspiracy the show never bothered to deny. We don't choose our roles, but we can choose how we fill them. Rob chose to be the villain who secretly protects the world. Gumball chose to be the protagonist who extends kindness to his enemy. Barbara chose to be the artist who paints the truth, even when the truth is terrifying. And the show chose to be the cartoon that asks questions it never answered, because the asking is enough. I want to end with one more image. In the rewrite, after Rob has sacrificed himself, again, to protect Elmore, there's a scene where the awesome store shopkeeper gives him a shadowy cloak. It's simple, almost ceremonial. Rob puts it on, and his new purpose is explained. He will watch over Elmore, protecting it from the void, guarding the characters from the truth that would destroy them, for as long as the show continues. And when the show ends, when the final cancellation comes, the one that can't be reversed, Rob will be there, standing at the edge, holding the line. It's such a small moment, barely a few seconds of screen time, but it contains the entirety of what this show is about. A broken character, rejected by the world, finds his purpose not in revenge, or power, or recognition, but in protection. In quiet, unseen, uncredited protection of a world that once tried to delete him. He's the conspiracy. He's the cover-up. He's the reason the truth stays hidden and the world keeps turning. And he does it because he loves them, all of them. Even Gumball, who forgot his name and flew past him in the void and never looked back. That's the heart of it. Under all the meta-narrative and the mythology, and the void, and the paintings, and the universal remotes, and the cosmic horror of animated existence, there's just love. The stubborn, irrational, beautiful love of a character who would rather spend eternity hiding the truth than let the people he cares about face it. The amazing world of Gumball is a conspiracy, a beautiful, layered, endlessly fascinating conspiracy. And the thing it's conspiring to hide isn't darkness, it's tenderness. It's the fact that underneath the chaos and the glitches and the status quo reset and the metafictional vertigo, there's a show that loves its characters so much it would rather destroy the fourth wall than let them come to harm. And it never denies any of it. Not one word, not one frame. It just keeps going, episode after episode, season after season, voice actor after voice actor, letting the conspiracies pile up, letting the questions multiply, letting the void lurk, and Barbara paint, and Rob stand guard, trusting that if it tells the story well enough, and long enough, and warmly enough, the void won't come. The show won't end. The characters will keep living in their beautiful, impossible, mixed media, live action backgrounded, multi-art styled, cartoon that knows it's a cartoon world. And maybe they will. Maybe the story never really ends. Maybe every time someone presses play on a Gumball episode, the void retreats a little. Maybe Elmore exists as long as someone is watching. Maybe the conspiracy is that the audience is the magic device Gumball asked for at the end of the finale. The force that resets reality and keeps the world going, not through any cosmic mechanism, but through the simple act of caring. If you're still here, if you've been with me through all of this, through the void and the static and the paintings and the post-it notes and the universal remotes, thank you. Thank you for keeping Elmore alive for a little longer tonight. And if you've already drifted off, that's okay too. The conspiracies will still be here when you wake up. They always are. The show never bothered to deny them, and neither will I. Good night, everyone. Sleep well.